City Council for Tuesday, April 17, 2018 is now called to order. Councilmember Goodspeed will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Cooper.
Here.
Councilmember Beaton.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Zielinski.
Here.
Councilmember Goodspeed.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Here.
Councilmember Pontiac.
Here.
City Manager.
Here.
City Attorney.
Here.
DPW Director.
Here.
Finance Director.
Here.
City Engineer.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have, like to make a motion.
Okay.
At the request of the city manager and the chamber, I'd like to have Section A, consideration of economic development service proposal from the Chamber of Commerce, removed from the agenda.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Zielinski to remove item 8A, consideration of economic development services proposal from the Chamber of Commerce, removed from the agenda, and a second by Councilmember Beaton. Is there any discussion?
Can I ask why?
Removed.
Huh?
Just removed. They ask it be removed.
Okay.
They want to bring it back at the May
Work
work
session.
session. They thought it might be a more appropriate venue for the discussion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, City Clerk, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Cooper.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zielinski.
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Pontiac.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Public hearings. Item 2A, public hearing on the 2018-2019 budget and capital improvement plan. The city fiscal year runs from July 1 through June 30. Under Section 7-4 of the Charter, a public hearing is required on the budget, which must be adopted not later than May 15 of each year. A work session was held on Tuesday, April 10th, with an additional work session scheduled for later this evening. An optional work session can be scheduled for Tuesday, April 24th. The budget calendar anticipates adoption of the budget at the May 1st, 2018 meeting. At this time, the public has an opportunity to comment on the 2018-2019 budget and capital improvement plans. Anyone wishing to make comment on the 2018-2019 budget and capital improvement program, could please come forward to the podium, state your name and your address.
I'm Sarah Helge, 450 Cedar Street. I'm going to speak about the Ramsdell. Woody Dumas, the mayor of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is quoted as saying, "The arts are the best insurance policy that a city can take on itself." The city of Manistee is indeed fortunate to have ownership of the Ramsdell Theater. The building by itself is a marvelous civic asset, but without financial support for effective programming and for a cared-for building, it's nothing but an empty shell. In the council's wisdom over the years, it has supported the Ramsdell financially. Why? Because in order to be good stewards of public money, you want a multitude of opportunities for your citizens. Not just recreational, not just educational, not just structural. You want something that is hard to quantify, hard to qualify, but something that is central to each and every person's life. Yes, the arts are included in that well-used phrase, quality of life, and it's what city officials help provide as they bear in mind that the arts are not only part of life, but are life itself, and because they believe that arts should be available, accessible, and affordable for all their citizens. The entire West Coast region is one of the most attractive places in which to live, from beautiful South Haven to quaint Northport. Why is Manistee chosen? In conversations with many people who have chosen to make Manistee their home, it's clear that the Ramsdell is part of their decision. From the 2014 strategic planning study, one of the written assumptions that was decided upon stands out. Quote, "The governing body of the Ramsdell must be collaborative, forward-thinking, and fully committed to its mission, vision, purposes, and sustainability. The new Ramsdale Regional Center for the Arts Board has taken significant steps in fulfilling this assumption. In the last 2 years, it has provided more effective programming than in the past, which has resulted in more people attending concerts, plays, classes, and other events, and it has taken great strides to raise funds. In the last 2 years, the board has succeeded beyond our goals. The support provided by the city for the operation of the RRCA has been very appreciated and has been very necessary to the momentum we are beginning to see. We have accomplished the funding goal of the 2014 Strategic Planning Committee, which was to reduce city funding by 33% from 2014 until the 2017-18 fiscal year. In actual fact, we have reduced city operating subsidy of the Ramsdale by 49% since 2014. 49%. The board of the RRCA feels it is in the city's best interest to continue to subsidize this crown jewel of our area. At this time, the board would respectfully ask that we receive our original proposed funding for the 18-19 fiscal year at $55,000, which is $5,000 less than what we received in the 2017-18 budget. And as Woody says, the arts are the best insurance policy that a city can take on itself.
Good evening. My name's Al Fry. I live at 2264 Murky Road in Manistee. I'm going to reiterate a lot, I think, with what Sarah just said, but I think the Ramsdale Theater is a gem. It's not only a gem for the city of Manistee, it's a gem for the entire region. The city is a guardian of an historic asset for this area. No other local community has any theater that rivals its history and grandeur. A few years ago, as my wife and I pondered our decision of where to retire, we considered all aspects of potential full-time life in Manistee. The existence of the Ramsdale Theater played a part in that decision, in fact, a big part in that decision. I'm sure that Ramsdale has had that same effect on many other local citizens. I'm honored to have served on its board for the last 2 years. Through the new board structure, we have made great strides toward increased fundraising and increased revenue from productions. The gem that is the RRCA continues and will continue to need financial support from the city government. In fact, no organization of its kind anywhere in the United States can survive without some governmental support. Though last year's fundraising efforts were very effective, it still was not enough to fund the RRCA completely. The RRCA budget for 2018 shows a $10,000 deficit, even with the current level of $55,000 contribution of the city government. Since 2014, the city's contribution has been reduced, as Sarah said, by almost 50%. The future of the RRCA is bright. Now it is a critical moment that could greatly affect that future. Any decrease in public funding will greatly stymie all recent advances. Every dollar which the city takes away will make further advances ever more difficult. Thank you for this.
I'm Phil Kleiber, 448 2nd Street. I'm representing the Manistee Saints. I'll be brief. I know you have a long agenda this evening. I would like to thank the council for their $3,000 apportionment last year to help us with maintenance and improvements at the ballpark. Also thank Jeff and Mickey and the crew who were available whenever we needed them. They did a nice job. Last year with grass cutting, fertilizer, irrigation system maintenance, water, clays, and various infield materials, including 20 ton of infield material, the Manistee Saints spent $13,199.64 at Reeds Park. As many of you may know, Manistee High School has had a problem with their field. They will be moving to Reeds Park for this spring season along with Catholic Central, if God allows. And the Saints and the youth team are there in the summer. I'm sure these numbers, as you all know that work on a budget, are going to increase for the coming year. I just wanted to thank you for your help in the past and keep that in mind, the partnership we have formed, the Saints and the city, to make Reeds Park the best baseball facility in northern Michigan. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. I live and breathe at the Ramsdale, 101 Maple Street. As the executive director of the Ramsdale Regional Center for the Arts, a primary role I must undertake is in advocating for the arts in this community. I've seen how it can transform people and other communities. I've been a part of it, and I have also facilitated in the process organizations like Americans for the Arts, which is the pinnacle of arts advocacy in our nation and the people responsible for saving the NEA from being eliminated from the GDP, have the statistics to support how much a local economy benefits from a thriving arts and cultural tourism program. We know our audience and continue to learn from them show after show. We collect surveys and anecdotal information and adapt our programming to be more desirable. It is a known fact that half of our audience are locals and the other are non-locals. Non-locals will drive more than 60 miles to come see a production. Non-locals spend twice as much money when they visit Manistee. Places like TJ's, North Channel, Fillmore, Bluefish, and other restaurants in the area experience a surge of customers, and new customers learn something about Manistee that oftentimes results in returning to that establishment. We also know that the main reason they come to the city is because of the events occurring at the Ramsdale. We've been great tenants and stewards of the building and responsible with our budget. You can go online and view our 990, which is required by the IRS, which shows you how we spend our money, the overall majority of which supports programming. The support we receive from the city of Manistee is essential to continue the momentum we've built up. Looking ahead, the new tax reform will negatively impact nonprofits like the Ramsdale Regional Center for the Arts. Every industry professional says that there will be a reduction in donations. Couples, which are the majority of our county residents, now get to itemize only after $24,000. There is no data to support by how much donations will be reduced because we haven't been through a full year to assess it. However, the city support is needed now more than ever and is essential for our success. We hope council will approve the $55,000 that we originally requested. We ask that council support the RRCA's efforts to undertake the funding, operations, and maintenance of the building. This is city property after all, and it continues to be a critical city asset. Although our fundraising had successes, please don't punish us because of this, but continue to support us and our operations. Every dollar invested in the Ramsdale is an investment in your community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Brooks. I live at 71 Oak Street, downtown Manistee. And I don't have anything prepared. I'm just going to share my story. I moved here in January of 2013, and I was absolutely miserable here. Not a whole lot to do. So if I was going to complain about it, which I did to friends and family from where I lived, I thought I need to get involved and do things in the community. And first of all, one of the things that I did was I went to the Ramsdale Theater for a play. And I clearly remember sitting in that theater, taking pictures of it, and texting friends and family from out of town and saying, I can't believe that we have something like this in Manistee. And for all of you to want to take away the funding for that, I don't even know the thought process there, because it brings people to our community, and it also brings our community together with the events that they have. And I felt lucky after 2 or 3 months of living here that we had something like that in Manistee, that I could go to and invite friends and family from outside of the town to go to something like that. And to take away their funding, to me, I can't even understand what that thought process is. So I mentioned that I was miserable living here, so had to get involved and do things. And some other things that I did was buy a building downtown, start a business downtown, because I felt the momentum of our city as far as the Bluefish opening up, the Vogue Theater opening up, having this wonderful Ramsdale Theater in our area, and then the Fillmore opening up, and then felt even more momentum opening up when I heard about a brew pub, when I heard about other developments in our area, condo developments, and got excited. There's options now. But this council continues to decline those options. For example, the food trucks. For example, outside seating at restaurants. I mean, do you go on vacation and see what's going on in other areas? Outside seating, food trucks are not this brand new idea.
Food trucks are not on the agenda, and neither are outside eating areas. This is the budget.
Okay, so the budget wants to take money from other organizations that are going on to do other things, which I'm not hearing tonight that those things are all that important. But what I am hearing is that the Ramsdale is quite important, and I hope that you consider keeping that money in the budget. We're racing to get up here. Hi, Jenny Pelton, 329 First Avenue for almost 26 years. So fortunate to have gotten to move to Manistee, Michigan. I thank you all for what you do. I know it's not easy. Definitely not doing it myself. Anyway, the Ramsdale is such an asset. It's an asset like everything else we have in this town. Our police, our fire department, our streets. And if I was here just for myself, I'd talk to you about my street, because 1/3 of the year it's flooded. But I've taken on the opinion that I call myself waterfront property now. So, you know, I'm here for the greater good. Like, let's all look at the greater good. The Ramsdale is part of the greater good. When I moved here, I was very fortunate to meet Nancy Lyons. She asked me to get on the Art Institute board back in the day. I was so fortunate to have someone like that as a mentor. I was on it for a couple years, moved on. Then someone asked me to be in a play. Learned a lot about being in a play. Make sure you know you're not in every act. But anyway, had a great time. Got to experience the Ramsdale from underneath, on the stage, everywhere. What a joy. But if you were in that Ramsdale theater 24 years ago, and then you were in that Ramsdale theater now, there's no comparison. I mean, it's such a jewel. And now I'm fortunate to have been invited to be on the RRCA Board of Directors to help support it and continue the momentum. And we do need your financial support. Like I said, it's a city-owned asset. The group that has been running this and adding programs is doing amazing work, but we need all the money we can get, we need all the donations we can get to keep it going. And I think most of you know I'm a realtor. I sell Manistee every day. And I honestly have people say to me, is this heaven? I'm like, yep, it's just this side of heaven. And we are fortunate, just in this room alone, we've got Thad Taylor, who chose to move here, Tyler Lepinen, Xavier Verna, Stacy Bikework, and who are not here are some doctors that I rented to a few years ago. They moved to Virginia for great jobs. They're like, nope, coming back to Manistee, investing in our town. They go to the Ramsdale. They went to the Vogue the other day. They shop downtown. They eat downtown. We've got Unsalted, people from Grand Rapids coming up here and investing. We have 2 young couples that opened TJ's and then now Manistee Beverage. People are investing because we have jewels like the Ramsdale. So I'm just going to give you some personal experiences. After the St. Patrick's Day party, I was down at TJ's and I met some people from Frankfurt. They come to every event, they said, at the Ramsdale. And they asked me to let them know how much it would cost for their daughter who's going to get married next year to rent the Ramsdale from Frankfurt, okay? And then the other person said they'd like to bring their office staff down for a party. So they came all the way, they ate dinner out, they were at TJ's having drinks, they were at the Ramsdale. Again, the effect on our whole community. Then a client that I sold a place to from Grand Rapids, he brought up 5 of his friends to experience the St. Patrick's Day event. Again, went out to dinner, went out afterwards. So anyway, I appreciate all you do. I know you have a lot of decisions to make on the budget. Everything we have in this community is an asset, but the Ramsdale is a jewel of an asset. And don't worry about my street, because I'm fine.
I got waterfront property. Thank you.
That's good.
Hello, my name is Laura Heinzelman, and I'm speaking in my role as president of the Manistee County Community Foundation. I have had the privilege of working alongside many of our area nonprofits, as well as working hand in hand with the city and other units of government. And in my role, I've come to learn that it's absolutely critical in a community of our size, in a community with our hopes and dreams for keeping our residents here that are with us today, for attracting new residents to live in our community, and for making sure that the people who live here already have full and enriched lives. It's absolutely critical that we invest in above and beyond what we might call essential services to make sure that members of our community can continue to grow and learn at all ages. And I have been really encouraged by what I've seen from the Ramsdale Theater and their growth and the RRCA, from the Manistee Saints and the conversations I've had with them over the years, with the Manistee Recreation Association and others. And I just want to encourage you as you prioritize funding, and everyone has limited funding, and that's understood, but please make a priority be the enrichment of the lives of your residents and citizens. Thank you.
I'm Jerry Johnson. I'm a resident of 390 River Street. Let me get it straight. I don't mean to kind of go off the venture where they're at. I'm here more for the city cuts that we're talking about. To my knowledge, that they're going to be pretty deep for the fire, police department, and the first responders. I've been here for 6.5 years. I watched this city grow in magnitudes. I mean, my office is looking at it right straight across the street to watch the Vogue to do what they did. We got new things coming in, and they're talking about cutting the police department with the new grow facilities that want to come in here, and which I'm not against, not opposed. I'm not here for that. We can't cut the police department. We got it pretty much to where we want it. I've talked to several people downtown the last week and half, all business owners. Then they all have the same condolences I do. We have a really good police department right now. You know, people's done a wonderful job to put them people in place. Our fire department's great. Our first responders are great. To see them take cuts would be just tragic to me. I'm in a tough line. I own a precious metal business. We see riffraff, obviously. You know, I have it every day in my shop. And I would feel uncomfortable if we took away from them kind of spots. I mean, I would just be devastated. The influence we've had from outsource, you know, the Oaks being where it's at, we see more and more of that every day down here. When you bring them prisoners up, we also bring their families up. When you bring them families up, they're usually not I'm not saying all of them, but it's just usually not good. But I'm here to speak for that and hope you don't take the cuts out deeply on them three, fire, rescue, and police department. Chief Tim has done a wonderful job. I mean, I think he's more transparent than anybody I've ever seen here. Nothing against Chief Bachman, night and day. The chief's always out on the streets. He comes and sees the business owners. He wants to talk to us, see where we need to be, where he needs to be. His police officers are doing a wonderful job. I can't talk much about fire because never had a fire yet. As far as the EMTs, I had a bad incident 2 years ago in my shop. A girl went down while we were doing business, and I can't speak highly how quick they got to her. Scared or, just out of my wits. To see them get there, I thought, wow, that's a good relief. But when you take these cuts on and think about putting them cuts in place on them three, please consider that we're growing. I watched this town grow immensely. I think y'all know that. The Vogue Theater, I've been in construction all my life. I would have told you put a stick of dynamite and blow it offside that other building and start over. They did a wonderful job. The volunteers here, they do a wonderful job. I'm proud to be a Manistee resident now. I come from a big city. So I think we have, what I got this week downtown from the business owners is that they really think it's running really, really smooth. You know, we think we're at a pretty good level where we're at today. You know, more growth, always we'll have to put more on, but right now I think we're at a great level. I appreciate you giving me time, and will you please take them in consideration when you go to do that. I appreciate it.
Good evening. I'm Karen Goodman, 1925 12th Street. I'm your county commissioner for the 6th District, which is the city of Manistee. I can truly appreciate where you're at. Every year, as commissioners, Commissioner Botzer, myself, and the others, we wish there was a money tree out back that we could go and get the money off of. You know, the services continue to increase, and the monies do not increase coming in. And so we're always fighting this issue of where to put the money. What I would say, I mean, I have my personal beliefs and my personal ideas, but I would want to say that the city of Manistee is making big changes, and the city is growing, and it is prospering, and you've done some great things over the years to make that happen. And in the county, we're trying to do the same thing so that the county also, I mean, the city lives, the county lives. We know that. You're the heartbeat of Manistee County. So we want to see you be successful. Today I was in a meeting with a group of educators and members from the Chamber of Commerce, and we had a discussion about why can't we get people to move here. I'm begging for employees. I can't get people to move to Manistee. And mostly it's the younger people. Families, I can put a hook in them very easily because people want to raise their children in an environment like this. But our younger generation of people, they want things to do. So as you think about your budget and as you think about the assets of Manistee, city of Manistee, please remember that this is going to impact everything we're growing on, everything that we're moving forward in. Our economic development is going to be essential to some of these decisions and what is cut and what is kept. I know it's difficult. I totally appreciate where you're at, but I just needed to say that for you. Thank you.
Stacy Bitework, 297 Lakeshore, on behalf of the Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce. I just want to echo Karen a little bit. We do hear that often from our employers, that it is hard time recruiting, and we do have a great asset, and I will use the Ramsdale, so please do consider that as well. And just echoing what a few others have said, those are some things that we just want to take a look at. And we do have Xavier, who's moved here, who's a wonderful colleague of mine, and keeping him here in this community, we're lucky to have him as well. So just consider some of those things when taking a look at it. And again, I know your job is tough, and I appreciate everything you do for our city, so thank you.
My name is Linda Gamashchuk. I live at 3454 4th Avenue on the north side. I'm here representing the Manistee County Teen Center. I see the other side of what these people talk about downtown. I see the youth in our community. The Teen Center has about 15 kids on an average every day. We're open 6 days a week. We get the neighborhood latchkey kids that would go home to an empty house or not go home at all. We let them play in our yard. They go on the skate park. They skate on the ice when it's there. They play basketball and tennis and everything that we have. They come to us for a place to come. We appreciate the money that the city lets us use, but please don't forget about those kids. They're a small portion of the community, and they're diamonds in the rough. We have the Jewel, we have the Ramsdale, but these are diamonds in the rough that are growing, and I hope that we can all say they grow up to be good kids. We have a lot of success stories. We get a lot of troubled kids, but they find their way, and they usually find their way back to us. So that's all I have to say.
Frank Cardella, 580 Broad. I just want to go back to what Stacy mentioned about recruitment and retention for the community. I think the Ramsdale plays a huge, vital role in our community. I actually moved here from Chicago and reside now here in Manistee. And when I told that to my family, my friends, and they said Manistee, Michigan, they probably looked at me like I was, talking to them crazy. But I think there's potential here. I believe the Ramsdell is a very significant source for our community. I think it would draw, talent to this area. If you look at the whole western state of Michigan, I would say Manistee, I hate to say it, it's probably lagging out of all the communities. So just to, fund the Ramsdell and potentially have it flourish so we can actually get new growth here, talent back into Manistee, I think it would be a good thing. You definitely, I see it at the hospital. Recruitment and retention is very poor. There's a lot of turnover. Why is it? Is it the community that they're living in? Is it the lack of resources? I'm just trying to throw ideas out there, but I think things need to change and need to be done, not only for us, that the audience members and you guys, but to also get people to come here. This is a great area. I've been here since July, and I have a 7-month-old at home. I think it's an awesome place to have a family. So just throwing ideas out there, but that's all I have. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shelley Doyen. I am the owner, along with my husband, of the Ideal Kitchen downtown 421 River Street. And right now, to be really honest with you, I'm feeling very selfish because there are way bigger issues than why I am here this evening. And I just want to reiterate on the Ramsdell and our police department, having a retired state trooper as a husband. They need support on that as well. And I respect everyone's opinions and that has been said here tonight. So feeling very selfish, I am asking for the consideration of my food truck this Saturday.
That's on the agenda item.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
This is the public hearing for budget.
Okay, well, there we go.
That's next.
Okay.
You're there, go ahead and do it.
Oh, that's all right. I won't take any more of your time. That's all I needed to say for.
Go ahead.
Okay, so sorry. And I was just asking for consideration for the food truck. When I found out about this, I didn't realize that there was an ordinance on that. My advertising was in place and like that. But this Saturday, our 12-year anniversary sale, we're having lots of fun things, cookware demos and like that. I gotta say that because of the advertising, I've had numerous calls, messages, emails of people from Chicago, Detroit, the UP are coming to this. So I believe that our whole downtown will benefit from the people that are coming and from this. And I just wanted to ask consideration for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. David Meister. I live at 9179 Northwood Highway, Onekama, Michigan. Township supervisor, as maybe some of you know, for 26 years. I'm well familiar with the budget. We've had to do my budget for 26 years and run a balanced budget. I don't envy your job after looking at it online. I can say that. I'm here representing, or kind of make a comment on the Ramsdell. We've been involved with the Ramsdell. My daughter had been in dance class, and we have attended since she's 32 years old now for years, and have seen that go from what I would call a dilapidated building to a jewel of Manistee, supported by the city, as it is city-owned. I think in the last year and a half, you could say that the attendance at events going back has improved dramatically. It's a drawing place, and I think people come from outside this community and end up going to the restaurants, to the bars. They get a bite of Manistee when they're here, and I hear about it in Onekama. We hear about it in Frankfurt. So I think the proposed $5,000 cut that the board put forward was a legitimate cut. It's almost 10%. I think you going to down to 45,000, roughly a 25% cut, adversely affects that when they provide a service that brings people into the whole community, not just the Ramsdell Theater. I have a little selfish, I guess, reason for this, because the director is my new son-in-law. So I might as well say that, because someone later will say, why is he here from Onekama? But I could put, yeah, full disclosure, I could put a little personal thing to that, Jim, is I see what effort Xavier puts into this. He puts his heart and soul into this, and I think it shows in the attendance. I think it shows in the involvement. You don't know it, but I see it because we go over to the house. My daughter makes dinner for us every once in a while, more often than she probably should. He doesn't get home some nights till 7:30, 8 o'clock. He's down here on Saturday working, you may not know. He comes in on Sundays some days because there's so much to do. He's not shying away from the job. I think he's embraced the job for the community. And I think that's very important because I think it shows in not only donations, I think it shows in people's support tonight that I see here, supporting that. So, and I'm well aware of balanced budgets. Like I said, I know, you know, the proposed cut was $5,000. I would hope you would reconsider and refund it to what they originally asked for. And I won't get in the rest of your budget because I think you have enough problems to deal with. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on the budget? If not, we will move on to item 3, citizen comments on agenda-related items. Shelley, you already took care of that, right? Okay. Are there any other citizens that wish to make comment on agenda-related items? No? Consent agenda, item 4. All agenda items marked with an asterisk are on the consent agenda and considered by the city manager to be routine matters. Prior to approval of the consent agenda, any member of council may have an item from the consent agenda removed and taken up during the regular portion of the meeting. Consent agenda items include approval of minutes, payroll, revenue and expenses, invoices, notification regarding the next work session, and consideration of a National Day of Prayer gathering at City Hall. At this time, council could take action to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski and a second by Councilmember Grabowski. Is there any discussion? City Clerk, please take roll.
Councilmember Pontiac.
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Unfinished business, we have none. New business, we've removed item A. We'll move on to item B. Consideration of a food truck on River Street for Ideal Kitchen celebration. The Ideal Kitchen is celebrating 12 years of operation in the city of Manistee. The Ideal Kitchen is requesting approval for a food truck to be parked in front of the business during the celebration on April 21, 2018 from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The truck would take up 3 parking spaces in front of the Ideal Kitchen, 421 River Street, and surroundings 423 River Street. At this time, council could take action to approve the usage of a food truck in front of Ideal Kitchen and surroundings on River Street, subject to appropriate department approvals.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Beaton and a second by Councilmember Goodspeed. Is there any discussion? City Clerk, please take roll.
Councilmember Cooper.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed.
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Pontiac.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
Yes, and congratulations for 12 years.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item C, consideration of the Tight Line for Troops charity fishing event. Tight Lines for Troops Committee is requesting approval for the 2018 Charity Veterans Fishing Event to be held May 18 and 19, 2018. The event will be held at the 3-acre parking lot across from the public boat launch on First Street. The committee also requests use of the municipal marina, the marina building, both upper and lower, River Street in front of the marina for bus loading and unloading, and the Ball Diamond parking lots on Cherry Street for volunteer parking. At this time, council could take action to approve the Tight Lines for Troop charity fishing event to be held May 18 and 19, 2018, subject to the appropriate department
I'll
approval.
make that motion.
Okay, I'll second them.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski, a second by Councilmember Goodspeed. Is there any discussion?
Good luck.
Would you please take roll?
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed.
Yep.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Pontiac.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Item 9, notices, communications, and announcements. Item A, we have a report from the Manistee County Community Foundation. As a regular part of each council meeting, it is a report from a cooperating agency, organization, or department. At this time, Ms. Laura Heinzelman will report on the activities of the Manistee County Community Foundation and respond to any questions the council may have regarding their activities.
Good evening. I'm Laura Heinzelman. I'm the president of the Manistee County Community Foundation. And Mayor Smith, Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski, and council members, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this evening and provide an update on our recent activities. I think this last cover from our most recent annual report really embodies the philosophy of the Manistee County Community Foundation, that when we're working together alongside government, engaging philanthropy with our nonprofit partners and with the private sector, there truly is no limit to what we can do for our community and as a community. And we thank you for your partnership over the years. Oops. I think. Making sure I've got it on. Not sure. Can't get that to work either.
Here.
Wait, do you mind? So the Community Foundation is just as our name implies. It's a community. So whether we're talking about people who are connected by geography, by their values, by where our kids go to school, by where we shop, and certainly by where we work, we are connected in a multitude of ways. And by foundation, which really provides a platform for growth and development. The Manistee County Community Foundation is one of more than 1,000 across the country, and of over 100 in Michigan, that collectively hold more than $76 billion in assets for their communities. Our mission remains the same across the country. However, we're each different because we're based on the unique needs and opportunities that face our own communities. The Manistee County Community Foundation has been in existence for a little over 30 years. And we have been working to enhance the quality of life for Manistee County residents today and forever. And we do that by building a permanent source of community capital, primarily endowed funds, by awarding grants that address local needs. Over our time, we have awarded more than $2 million in grants in support of our community. And we serve to provide leadership to effect positive community change. I'd like to recognize our current board of directors of the foundation. This group of people has been instrumental in a really exciting time of evolution and change and growth for our foundation, and continues to provide great leadership and insight into our future direction. Looking back at 2017 at a glance, our annual report will be out a little later this year, but some of the highlights are that this past year we received almost $9.5 million in gifts and grants, and I'll get into that in a little more detail in just a moment. At the same time, we awarded more than $440,000 in grants and scholarships back out to the community. 2 new funds were established at the foundation last year for a total of almost 100 different funds. And Community Foundation is unique because we serve to further all aspects of quality of life, whether it's environment, education, arts and culture, health and human services. It's the full gamut. Last year, our investment return on our portfolio was 16.92%, and our total assets grew to just over $25 million. So it's been a really exciting time of growth and impact. I wanted you to see this graph. I'm sure you've heard some of the recent gifts that the foundation has received over the past couple of years, and this really highlights the trajectory that we're on, and really just, I think, paints a clear picture of the difference that an individual or a couple of individuals can make in the health of a foundation and the impact that we'll be able to have moving forward. So, please. And this gentleman here has a lot to do with where we're at. Forrest R. Minger Jr. never lived in Manistee County, but he loved it. He came here, he shared every second that he had from the minute he ended his workday to the minute he had to return, and he loved his job. He worked for Dow Corning as a chemist. He was got involved early on in the salmon fishery in Manistee and literally became hooked. And he shared that he enjoyed so many happy times here in our community that he wanted to give back. And we had the privilege of working with him in setting up his gift. I had no idea about the significance, the amount of his gift moving forward. But he was very thoughtful about wanting to give in a community that gave so much to him, but also in a small community where he felt he could really have a big impact. And we're incredibly honored to have received his gift. We've received over $15 million through his estate, the vast majority of which set up the Minger Family Endowment Fund, which is focused on furthering recreational assets and opportunities in our community across Manistee County. He also established a scholarship fund that will support students graduating from all of our area high schools. So while we are incredibly honored and privileged to have received this gift, we're also mindful of the profound responsibility that we have to be sure that his intent and his wishes are carried out as part of his ongoing legacy. The second reason for our recent growth has been the establishment of the Limitless Fund. At the encouragement of an anonymous donor who wanted to provide more ability for the foundation to respond to a wide array of community needs and to be strategic in meeting some of the gaps that are out there, we were able to secure commitments, matching commitments, to establish the new Limitless Fund. And just as the name implies, it is set up there without a specific purpose in mind, while the vast majority of the foundation's funds are set up for either a particular nonprofit, particular program, sometimes an area of life, but it really hinders our ability to be responsive in a broader sense. And at the same time, this new fund as an endowment will allow us to be able to be responsive 50 years, 100 years, forever, truly, when we can't anticipate what those needs are today. It will provide the flexibility to be able to meet community needs that we can't even imagine at this time. New funds that were established at the foundation last year include the Old Kirk Museum Fund, which was formerly Our Savior's Lutheran Church, which is, if you don't know, the oldest Danish Lutheran church in the United States. So they're working hard to establish a museum at that site and add additional programming there. Also, the Cynthia Ebel Memorial Scholarship Fund was established in memory of Cynthia Ebel, who was a dental assistant who worked in our community for over 30 years. And she was a delight to the customers that she served and really took so much joy out of her job. And her husband shared that he really wanted to support others in our community pursuing a degree or a certificate program in dental assisting and established this new scholarship fund to help make that possible. In terms of grants awarded out of the foundation last year, I wanted to hit on a few highlights. More than $35,000 was awarded to scholarships to students who are continuing their education after high school, whether they are choosing to attend a four-year college, 2-year, or vocational or technical school. Various grants that go to support schools throughout our county as well as other educational programs, robotics, preschool STEM programs, arts in the classroom, you name it, really across the gamut. Also, we received a grant from the Michigan Health Endowment Fund and partnered with District 10 Health Department to offer the Live Well Manistee Collaborative Grant Program, which helped ensure that all members of our community had access to healthy foods, and delivered a grant program accordingly. In addition, towards the end of the year, we offered a community mini grant program, and with the support from our donor advised funds, we're able to award more than $16,000 to support modest grants that our local organizations are really astute at making, those small dollars go a long way towards providing some great programming. In addition, we're currently involved with 3 funds that are not endowed, helping to support the Manistee Community Track effort, the Armory Youth Project, and their establishment of their new organization, as well as the annual operations of the Vogue Theater of Manistee. Each year, the foundation continues to convene the Youth Advisory Council, or YAC, as we fondly refer to them. They are the foundation's local panel of experts on the needs and issues that face our county's youth. They're comprised of high school students from all of our county's 6 high schools, and they come together once a month to learn about youth philanthropy, community, leadership skills, and one of their most important roles is recommending grants out of the Youth Endowment Fund. And I can tell you, out of all the different grant committees that the foundation convenes, this is the committee that not only I think people are the most nervous when they get up in front of to present, but they are incredibly critical and constructive thinking when they're analyzing a grant program and how they can stretch their dollars the furthest. Last year, they supported West Shore Community College College for Kids program for Manistee County residents, the Manistee County Library STEM maker kits, which are used throughout their summer library program as well as throughout the year, and provided support to the Armory Youth Project for their youth community garden. We continue to house and serve as the fiscal agent for both Launch Manistee and the Manistee Commitment Scholarship programs, and have been so grateful with the support of Bill and Marty Payne to have played a role in helping to further future opportunities for area high school students, beginning in the 9th grade, which will continue through their completion of a degree at West Shore Community College, and are grateful to our partnership with the college and Launch Manistee in that effort. Moving to funds that are directly within the city, or that the city owns the property, I wanted to just highlight the number of funds that are administered by the foundation. The first is the Lighthouse Park Project Fund, and this is a non-endowed fund that provides support for ongoing maintenance at the park in light of the new restoration effort that happened. The next is the Veterans Memorial Park Fund. Last year, a plaque was dedicated within the park, this one honoring prisoners of war and those missing in action. And this park continues to be a really important community gathering space and a really important place to honor our area veterans and the sacrifices they have made for our country and our community. The next is the Manistee Non-Motorized Trail Park Fund, and it looks like I could have taken this picture yesterday, but it's a 4-season park, and it really has, I think, provided a new wonderful opportunity for our residents and our visitors to, just a short distance out of town, be able to cross-country ski, ride a fat bike, a mountain bike, skate ski, and it has really been well-received and well-supported by our community. And of course, the Ramsdell Theater Preservation Fund, which is an endowment and provides ongoing support for the interior of the theater complex and ongoing support for maintenance there. And then finally, the Ramsdell Regional Center for the Arts Fund, which has complemented support that they've been very successful in garnering directly through the RRCA, but has provided another option for donors to continue to support the continued growth and development of the RRCA. Recently, we announced our 2018 grant cycle, and we are beyond excited to begin serving our community on a new level. And we hope the City of Manistee will consider submitting an application. The new this year is the requirement of a pre-application which is a brief form that we think will be mutually beneficial to applicants and the foundation to help think earlier on about the project that they are proposing, identify any potential challenges that might be in the project, really to help the applicants craft the best possible proposal for consideration by the foundation board. We have built in a lot of extra time this year to make sure that applicants are able to learn about our new process, our new application process, with a full proposal deadline not due until July 3rd, and we anticipate awarding grants in September. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions about that grant cycle. We look forward to hearing from you. In terms of the Limitless Fund, which is a key part of that grant cycle, this available funds for 2018 are $25,000, and the foundation is asking that projects can be submitted for any charitable purpose except for recreation, and that's simply because we do have the Minger Family Endowment Fund set up specifically for recreational purposes. The Minger Family Endowment Fund, the purpose of the fund is to improve recreational opportunities and access to recreation within Manistee County. And Mr. Minger had a broad vision in mind. He would like to see support for maintaining important recreation infrastructure, for expanding and improving, as well as for acquiring new properties that may be critical for developing new infrastructure for recreation. And of course, for developing entirely new recreational facilities, as they are identified and needed. In this first grant cycle, we have $215,000 available to grant, and we do envision that ramping up quite a bit within the next year. Some of these monies we have only had a portion of a year, so they haven't had the chance to have the earnings on them that others did. So for our first cycle, it's at $215,000, but we envision that growing quickly. The board of directors of the foundation did set some funding priorities for the Minger Endowment, and these are based on both the donor's intent as well as the recent Manistee Countywide Park and Recreation Plan. And these include trail acquisition and development, both connecting within the county and adjacent to Manistee County, trails that are outside of our area. And it includes both non-motorized and motorized trail systems. The second is indoor and or winter-based recreation. So it could be something that happens indoors during the winter, could be something that happens outdoors during the winter, but really providing more opportunity for our residents to recreate both indoors and in the winter. The third is water and fishing access sites, whether it's something new or improving an existing one. It includes water trails, so helping to connect our waterways for kayakers, for other boaters, and with a priority on gaps that we don't currently have in place there. And I leave you with a slide of Mr. Minger as a reminder of the reason that he loved our community and the reason that I think it's really important for us all to keep in mind how special this place is and our role, all of our role, in helping to keep it that way for ourselves and for our future generations. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
Sure, for the recreational only portion of, well, it's the Mingler Fund.
Yes.
Could some organizations such as the MRA apply for a grant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they would be. And to be eligible, the organizations must be a 501c3 nonprofit, a unit of government, or school district. Okay. Any others?
I'm guessing cities could do so also.
Absolutely.
I mean, back in the former contract, the city had a project for Veterans Memorial Park. Now you talked about veterans for a disabled access fishing pier
Yes.
down there. It would seem a pretty good fit for what the goals are.
We'll certainly be eligible under the guidelines, yes. And our full guidelines are on our website, and I'd also be happy to meet with any members of the city to talk in detail about a potential application. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Item C, a project update by Consumers Energy at 30 Jones Street. Update by Consumers Energy on their planned remediation efforts this year at 30 Jones Street, location of a former manufactured gas plant. Mr. Gustad?
Good evening. My name is Greg Zomer, and I am with Arcadis, project manager for Arcadis, consultant for Consumers Energy. I want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to provide an overview of the project that we're going to be working on as former manufactured gas plant site. If you want to flip to the next slide, please. A little bit about manufactured gas. Prior to natural gas becoming available, they used to generate gas in a low pressure system from coal, something like coal, and it was referred to as town gas. And that gas usually operated, or the process is usually started in about the 1800s, went through the early 1900s to about 1940 when natural gas became available. And that gas, referred to as town gas, would have been distributed to like homes and businesses and street lamps and things like that for towns just like Manistee throughout the world. This was a process throughout the world. And the plant here, as you can see, do you have a pointer? It's actually located on the corner of Jones Street and Mason Street. And I'm going to walk over here if you don't mind, just so I can show you a couple of features. So the manufactured gas plant actually sat right here. This is Manistee River. Jones Street would be here, and then Mason Street here. The plant sat right in this area here. There's the railroad track, which is now Genesee, Wyoming. And then they stored the gas that was generated from the coal in what are called holders. And you can see the top of it here, and then the top of one over here. And so those would have held the gas, and then those tops on those tanks there, relief holders, they actually were kind of a floating top, and they would generate some pressure, push the gas out to homes, the residents, and the businesses and stuff, so they could use it for home heating, lighting, and so on and so forth. That operated up until about 1945. Around that time, Consumers Energy purchased the company that operated that, and then they continued that, operate that, and the natural gas came available, and so they dismantled those features, those site features at the site. And so basically since 1995, we've been doing some, 1970, 1997 or so, we've been doing investigation to determine what potential impacts were associated with that. Typically, there were byproducts that were associated during the manufacturing of the gas, and some of those byproducts made their way into the soil. And so what we've been doing is, for Consultant for Consumers, is determining where the impacts are in the soil. Based on that and what we want to do, we've been working with the Department of Environmental Quality and determining how we were going to get it cleaned up. And so what we've come up with after doing some feasibility studies, what's called in situ soil stabilization and solidification. I know we'll get into that in just a little bit, but if you want to go to the next slide, it's an interesting slide. We actually got these photos from the library here, from the Historical Museum, and this just shows back in the day in 1800s how they would have completed those holder features. They were actually below grade structures. They had either a brick or a concrete cement bottom, and then they were brick walled, usually about 18 inches thick or so. And those are about 100, anywhere from 50 to 100 foot diameter, and that's where the gas was held at that time. Those structures have actually been excavated out. We've completed that work and excavated out those structures and any of the byproducts that were associated during the manufacturing of the gas process, and that's all been removed. But there was still some impacts to the soils that were below those structures. And so that's what we took a look at, and we evaluated the extent of those things, and then we've come up with a strategy to get this cleaned up. Next slide, please. So what is in situ stabilization and solidification? Basically, and I'm going to walk over here again just so I can show you this. It's a little bit easier for me. If this would be like a typical, say like a cross section of the land. So here you have the ground surface up here, and then you have maybe a water level down here, groundwater level, and then what this kind of red zone indicates would be where your impact is. And so what happens is as groundwater flows through there, those impacts can start to move a little bit, start to mobilize. And so what we want to do is we want to prevent that. We want to stop that from becoming mobile and possibly moving. And so what we do is we actually go in there and we install a bunch of cement columns, and we will drill these down in there and basically solidify this soil and everything in place so that now instead of groundwater flowing through that area, the groundwater is going to flow around that, what we call a monolith, and prevent any mobilization, movement, or impact to the environment. So basically we're mixing the soil to make a cement mixture, and then it's going to be, gives us a long-term protection of the environment and public health. Next slide, please. So how do we do it? We do it a couple of means. One is we have a large, it'll be like a, kind of like a crane. If you were to see a typical crane working at a construction site, we'll have a large crane, it'll have a large boom that'll go down, we'll actually have a large auger on the end of it. It'll be anywhere from 6 feet to 8 foot diameter. And then that auger is going to spin down into the soil, and as it's spinning down into the soil, it's mixing the soil with this cement mixture. And then as that goes down, it'll go down to the depth that we're trying to achieve at this site, and then we'll pull that back up, and then we'll let that solidify in place. The other way that we do it too is we also use an excavator. Most of everybody's familiar with an excavator down in the bottom picture there. For shallower stuff, we can go in there and we actually will mix the soil with this Portland type cement mixture. Now that's typically how we would do it. Next slide, please. And so when you look out there at that site, when you're out there, when we're doing this work, we'll be doing this work this summer. When you look out there, you'll see this a crane structure, and you'll see other typical heavy equipment that you might see at any construction site. This is a typical sequence that we will be doing out at the site. First thing we're going to do is the upper 15 feet of soil at the property there at Jones and Mason Street is currently it's clean. We've done some testing of that through their investigations, and so all that soil we're going to be excavating down to about 15 feet. We're going to be taking that soil, we're going to be putting it onto, staging it onto another piece of property that Consumers Energy owns on the other side of the Ironworks property. If you know where the Ironworks property is, okay? So we'll be installing there, and I'll show you a traffic sequence. After we get down to that depth, then we have where more of our impacted soil is. We're going to start actually putting these columns down, and we're going to solidify this area. And so we'll work across, and then we'll work down here, and as you just keep on going, and then basically then we'll come back up and we'll take that fill material, or the material that we remove that's clean. We're going to test that to make sure it's clean, to make sure it's below residential standards under the MDQ guidance. And we're going to take that soil and bring it back, and we're going to place it back on top of this sealed, solidified material. And so there'll be about 15 feet of soil, and then we'll finish that off with topsoil, and I've got another slide that will show that. So this is kind of the typical sequence that we'll have out at this site. Next slide, please. So right now what we've done, the process that we've gone through is we've put together a work plan for the DEQ, for the MDEQ. They've reviewed that and they have approved the process and the plan. And then we've also gone through a permitting process. We've been working on this for the past probably 1 to 2 years, getting our permits in place and the work plan approved by the MDEQ. That's all done. The permits that we have, we receive what's called a MDEQ and Army Corps of Engineers joint permit application so that we can work up to and just into down the bank of the river, so that they make sure that we have that all sheeted off so that we don't allow anything to go down the river itself. So that's all sheeted off there. We've also have our Manistee County Sediment Erosion Control permit, and that's in place, so we'll be putting silt fences all up around the construction project, and so that's already in place. We've been working with the Genesee, Wyoming, Genesee, Wyoming, right. Genesee, Wyoming Railroad for access, because we're going to have a fence line right up against pretty close to the rail itself, not right up against, but fairly close. And we're also going to be, and I'll show you in the next slide here in a minute, we're going to be accessing, we're going to be crossing that rail to keep off the streets when we're moving the soil. We have adjacent property owners that we've been working with, American Legion. We have access and permission with them because we'll be putting fences on their property. And we've also worked with the Sang property owner too, to get access to his property. The components, as I mentioned before, of the remedy really are excavation. We'll be doing that in that area that's dashed off there. Again, so this is the area that we're looking at. right here is where the former MGP sat. That holder that we looked at, that round structure, sat right here. That's been removed. So this dash line, here's the rail line here. Mason Street is here. Jones Street is right here. American Legion sits here. Manistee River up there. So here's our area that we're going to actually be excavating. So we'll be taking that down for the most part, except the perimeter, which will be shallow. We'll be taking most of this down to about 15 feet, as I mentioned. And then those columns are going to go pretty much throughout this whole area right here. Because our impact is actually where we see the soil is actually inside the footprint of this dashed line. So we will be going out beyond where there may be any impact in the soil or in the groundwater at that point there. And then we'll be doing the ISS, and then after that we do some post-remediation monitoring that we've worked out with the state of Michigan. Next slide, please. So one of the things that is important here is traffic patterns. We're trying to minimize as much as possible any traffic on the streets when we're moving this soil, because we are going to be moving quite a bit of soil. Again, here is our work area right here where we're going to be doing this. And so what the plan is right now is that as we excavate out this soil here, we're going to be placing it into trucks. And those trucks are going to travel across the rail. We're working with the rail right now to get a crossing put in right here. This will be this is again where Jones Street is, so we'll be coming right here. We'll have this fenced off. And then the trucks will go across the ironworks, I call it the same property, but the ironworks property here, and then come over here, and then this is where we'll stage the property, which is currently consumer's owned property. That's where we'll be doing our testing. Once we've established that the soil is below standard for the state, that soil, when we're done with all the columns, will then be transferred back using the same line back here and placed, compacted, and then filled. So that'll be our truck route, and to stay, again, we want to try to stay off the streets with all that soil and the trucks that we'll be moving through that area. Next, please. And then so the other thing that we'll have is some of the soil, of course, is going to have to go off-site. We're going to be putting this ISS material in there. That's going to have a little bit of what we call fluff that's going to come up, so it's going to take up some of the room that we took the soil out. We want to grade this back to a similar grade here, so some of that soil is going to go off to the Manistee County landfill. That's to the south of us about 6 miles. The truck route for that, coming in and out for those trucks, will be basically along Jones Street to River Street. We want to utilize this light here so we're not holding up this, trying to get across here, because that's a difficult intersection there. Use this, and then it'll go south down to the Manistee County landfill. From the Manistee County landfill, then they'll come, north back up here, takes this route, and back into the site. Next, please. The other thing that we will be doing is we have deliveries of material. We'll have deliveries of material kind of on a daily basis, and certainly several times during the week. And those materials will be coming up 31. We'll turn right onto Mason Street here. And then there's a couple, here's the American Legion. There is an entryway here, and there's an entryway here. We're going to have our fence lines going to come down here with a gated, and our trucks will come in here, drop off supplies, and either come out and go back this way, or they'll drop off supplies and probably not go back out this way unless it's a smaller truck. All the bigger trucks are going to go out this direction here. So that's our traffic pattern and routes right now. The next slide then. This actually has our pedestrian, because one of the things that, again, here's our work area, Jones Street, Mason Street, American Legion again. So we're going to have our fence line come. This yellow line represents the fence line. The fence line is going to come down. It's going to be on the other side of the sidewalk here. We're going to be staging trailers and other equipment that we need to utilize, and our mixing plant and those types of things in this area right down here, so we can have this open for the excavation in the ISS. So this portion of the sidewalk will actually be closed. We will leave this all open. The street will remain open for parking. We know that's important. There's a construction project and remodeling project that's going on here, so we understand that. So we wanted to make sure that we left this open. That's one reason why we're bringing our trucks in this way and then out this way, so there won't be any problem with cars parking on either side of this road here. We're going to leave the fence about 3-4 feet off this curb line, about 3 feet or so, if I'm correct on that. Yeah, 3 feet or so, to allow people who get out of the cars, they can get out easily. This sidewalk and these sidewalks will all remain open, so that'll be pedestrian traffic during construction. Next slide, please. So when we get all done with that, as I mentioned, we will be coming back in and we'll be taking the soil that's been tested from the other side, and we'll bring that in and we'll start placing that here, and we'll bring it up to grade. This right here is a cross section, so if you look across, if you go like this and make a cut right here and flip it on side, that's what this represents here. So here is our ISS material. There will be a demarcation fabric that will be placed on top of that, and then we will be putting the fill material back in, the same material that came out, topsoil, and then seed, grass, and so on and so forth right on down, and basically that'll finish that off for this year. Hopefully we'll be done in time to get the seed down before it snows.
Again.
It could be, you know, September. Anyways, so next slide, please. So our construction schedule, we actually started mobilizing to the site yesterday. So we started moving some equipment out there. We're doing some electrical work right now, and we're getting ready to stage some of our equipment and mobilize to the site. So this week is really a mobilization week where we mobilize some of our equipment, get it ready to go, set up fences. Next week that'll be happening. When we actually start the excavation activities will be in May, about May 17th or so, depending on weather, depending on when they lift frost laws. So there's some variables that are in there, but basically in May, the excavation and ISS activities where we do those columns will be done somewhat concurrently. So we'll be excavating out. As we excavate out, we'll start putting columns in. We'll do some more excavation. We'll do columns and some of that mixing. And that'll go from May to September. September to October, we'll start the backfilling, site restoration. The plan is right now October 24 in our schedule to demobilize from the site. And next slide. We do have we have some information that is available. We'll have a couple of, we have some fact sheets that are available that discuss a little bit, tell a little bit about the MGP, what it was, and the operations that were there. We also have a sheet that's frequently asked questions. That's available on a website that Consumers Energy has prepared. That'll be available for public to pull it up. It'll have a little information. It'll talk about where we are in the process, the things that we've completed, what our schedule is, and where we're going forward. And so that'll be available. If there's any questions that come up during the activities that we are doing out there, Eric Gustav of Consumers Energy will be available for, and I think most everybody knows Eric, will be available for answering questions or helping out in those questions that may arise. That's it. I want to thank you all for allowing us the opportunity again to provide an overview of the consumer.
I have a couple questions. You talked about the post-remediation monitoring that's going to happen. I'd like you to hear my thoughts on that. I like things to always be public. Can these results be boiled down into an easy-to-understand analysis for the public to look at so that you can have it online, available, or released to the newspaper when you're doing the testing? I think the environmentalist nature of our society kind of dictates that we should know, you know, that, hey, we're monitoring it, and it looks okay, and these are the levels it's supposed to hit, or we're, that kind of thing. So that would be my request.
I'll leave that to I'm Andrew Santini, the environmental project manager for consumers. So typically for any kind of testing and things like that, we'll collect the samples, we'll analyze them, we'll get the data back, and those are presented in an annual report. So we don't typically send those out when we get them or after they're validated. So when we do this post-monitoring, they will be publicly available in an annual report that will be submitted to the DEQ, and the city also gets a copy of that.
I think it's important that we post that for the public, so if it can be on the city website, anything.
That's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
You mentioned monitoring. I kind of touched on it after you get done, you're going to monitor.
Yep.
How long do you do that, and how do you monitor it?
So we have wells on site that we have been monitoring over time. So some of those will get abandoned because they're within the footprint of the ISS. Other ones that are around the perimeter will be monitoring. So, you know, those are things that we've set up with the DQ. I don't remember specifics offhand, but typically there's several events, anywhere from 2 to 4 events per year, where you would go out and take analytical samples or take groundwater measurements or take field parameters. And then those are evaluated to whether the ISS, you know, our monolith is doing what it was intended to do, and that's to encapsulate the impacts that were under the ground.
You're pretty well sure at this point that it hasn't affected our water, our groundwater at all, or it's pretty much contained?
We've had, so we have two, so where those holders are at, we have 2 groundwater systems in place that we're operating for a long time now. And so right now we're focused on getting that at the operational site, what we call it. So encapsulating all those impacts right there, so we don't have to continue to operate those groundwater treatment systems.
Okay, I'm kind of slow tonight, so you'll have to bear with me.
No,
So
it's
when when you're all done and you do this testing, you will be assured, or you can
Yep.
assure the public that it's encapsulated, it's not going to move, or
Yep. So once we're done, we'll have the block. So there are, during construction, we have performance criteria. So we're measuring the strength of the concrete. We're also measuring the permeability. So those are things that we're measuring in place as we're doing the construction to make sure it's constructed properly. And once we're done, and once we do that monitoring around the perimeter of the monolith, we'll be able to say yes, we have addressed those impacts on that site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got a few questions also. What depth are you talking about total?
45 to 50 feet below ground surface.
Okay, we have just had over at Public Works there's a situation with an old tank that was excavated, and things weren't properly taken care of there, and now they are, and they look at the migration of contaminants and samples in different directions towards water table and water flow and stuff. Has there been infiltration of the water table?
Yeah, so I mean, all the impacts, like Greg was saying, so the holders were below grade, and so all those soils were excavated. And the impacts are heavier than water, so they tend to sink down instead of float.
Okay.
So they would go down and then move if they.
And just real quick too, what we have out there from a geologist point of view, is we have a lot of sand. Basically, is beach sand. So kind of, anyway, similar to what you might see on the beaches out here, and that goes down to about 35 feet. And then there's a clay layer, and so the clay layer is very tight. Water doesn't really penetrate through it, and so as Drew mentioned, the material is a little heavier than water. It's a little denser than water. And so when it flows through the sand, it goes pretty much straight down from the tanks, and it'll go hit the water column, and then it goes down to that clay, and it kind of sits right on top of the clay. And so that clay being about 35 to 40 feet. And so we're going to be doing the ISS from basically the water table down to that clay layer and then into that clay layer to make sure that we've got it all. So it hasn't gone any deeper than that clay, so it's just kind of sitting right on top of the clay.
Okay, and that's going to be removed or capped, or what do you?
It'll all be encapsulated within this material. And we've done these types of projects all throughout the United States and really throughout the world. Very, very similar to this, along rivers, along lakes, different environments, and it's been very effective. It's something that has been recognized by state agencies throughout the United States, the US EPA. Also, there's a group that's both Canadian and the US work together. They've developed guidance for how to install these things, how to monitor during the installation of these things. We've been following all those guidance. All our work plans and everything have been associated with our past experience plus the guidance documents.
You're talking big trucks and heavy traffic, and I'm sure the roads that we have down there weren't built for that type of traffic. Is any consideration being given to road repairs and such if we have damage to our roads? We never have enough road money, so.
Yeah, we've, so part of our work is to do kind of a pre-road inspection and then a post-road inspection. So, you know, we were able to go across the Ironworks facility to stay off that, obviously, impact to the neighborhood, but also to stay off the roads. So our, you know, our heaviest trucks going back and forth will be across the Ironworks facility. Any of our trucks coming in for deliveries or going out to the landfill, those roads are going to be inspected pre and post, and if there is damage, then you know, those are things that we'd be responsible for.
But if you come up and come out First Street where the light's out, or River Street where the light's out, yeah, okay. Any other questions?
You know, and also on the website, so, you know, for, we just did I did a sediment remediation job in Flint. So this is kind of the same framework where, you know, for us, everything's kind of funneled through Eric. But the website would be a good tool that we're going to use to try to, you know, give updates every couple weeks, to kind of post some PDFs and with some pictures and kind of, here's what we did and here's what we're planning to do. So, you know, everybody can kind of see what's going on. And then also if there's any notices, we'll have the traffic, I don't know if the traffic map is up there, but just things that we're gonna post if we're closing the sidewalk, you know, a map to say, hey, the sidewalk's closed, or if there's other things going on. So that'll kind of be our primary tool for communication, but also, you know, Eric is kind of the point of contact, and then he can divide whether it's, you know, a technical, you know, to get Arcadis involved for technical, or for me, or somebody else.
And if you see there's a lot of questions about it that may not be on that site, let us know, because we can update it with some additional information if they request it. Happy to keep that updated as much as we can.
Yeah, the FAQ kind of is a living document. So these are ones just experience about what people have asked, and how we would answer that. And so if there's other ones that aren't out there, we'd be happy to add those to it and then update the site with those.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Moves us on to item 10, concerns and comments. Item A, citizen comment. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment on municipal services, activities, or areas of city involvement. Citizens in attendance shall be recognized by the mayor for comments. Please limit your comment to 5 minutes. Letters submitted to council will not be publicly read. Are there any citizens that wish to make comment on municipal service, activities, or areas of city involvement? No? If not, we will move on to officials and staff. Item B, city manager.
Yes, I just wanted to give a quick update on our SESH event that we had last Friday. The real good news is late this afternoon we received an email from our insurance carrier, and they are going to cover our losses. So that was nice to know. We started on Monday morning taking a look at our damage assessment. We had individuals from Spicer Engineering that walked the length of the river walk and looked at the river walk itself, plus any possible shore erosions, and then are going to spend some more time down at this the marina. And it looks like our marina kind of led with its chin and took the brunt of the damage. We're estimating about a third of our docks were just on rough visual inspections were compromised. There's a couple of them that might be in Green Bay. We don't know where they went. And but there's evidence of damage. So we're going to have to do a little bit more inspection there. I talked to Sean just briefly before the meeting started tonight, and they didn't see anything of grave concern on the river walk or along the shore. There's going to be some things we're going to need to get done, but the primary area of concern right now is our marina, and so we're going to have to coordinate with Meadowbrook Insurance to see how they want us to proceed on that. I'm certain they're going to get their own subject matter expert to come up here and have a dialogue with us and see what we can come up with for repairs. The concern is that number one, identifying our needs there is obviously the primary thing, putting a cost on it, and then probably the most concerning is trying to find someone that we can engage to make those repairs in a timely fashion. So that's about the latest and greatest on that event. The only other thing is I don't care to see another one. It was pretty interesting to see the river fluctuate to that degree, to see it run backwards. It was quite an event. But I'm very happy with the response of our city staff and the coordination we had. We opened up a mini emergency operations center here at City Hall. We had the Coast Guard was there, the emergency management coordinator for the county was here. We had the state police, we had tribal there, we had police, fire, DPW, and we worked it through. And obviously our first concern was life safety, and that's why we had all those closures. Right now, what's closed is the marina, the river walk, as well as the First Avenue launch. And the concern there is we know there's a lot of debris that washed up, but now with the snow, it's all buried, so we don't want to take equipment in there. So once that snow's melted, we can observe the debris, we'll remove that, and then we'll reopen that. And then that overlook parking area along First Avenue, that's still closed. There was some erosion there. So the rest of the areas that we had closed are now open. So we'll open the others as it's appropriate. So that's where we are with it. That's all
On
I have.
our overflow?
Yeah, we had a very small sanitary sewer overflow, and I think the discharge was about 60,000 gallons. So it was, in comparison, it was small.
Okay. Thank you. City Attorney?
Nothing, Honor.
City Clerk? Public Safety Director?
He's not here tonight.
He's not here. Ooh. Public Works Director?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Chief Finance Officer?
Nothing, Your Honor.
City Engineer?
Nothing other than we'll be summarizing our findings on the Riverwalk and providing that to the DPW Director and Manager.
Okay. Planning and Zoning? Not here.
She's not here. She's on vacation.
Okay. Just don't want to miss anybody, you know. Okay, council members.
Not at this time.
I'd just like to thank everybody who spoke tonight. Some of them have already left, but it's much appreciated. It's kind of lonely here sitting sometimes, trying to make decisions without really getting the feel of the pulse of the people. And I do appreciate everyone who took the effort to make comments. Thank you.
I got to bring up an issue. The motion on the sale of the city property. The motion was the sale of all city property. City property being vehicles.
No.
I know, no, that's not what the motion. The motion was all city properties. I'm just saying, that's why I voted no. Because all properties being vehicles, it didn't say vacant real estate property. I know the spirit of the motion, but the motion wasn't presented in that motion. And that's, am I right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, Councilmember Goodspeed had raised this concern to the city manager, who spoke to me, and I spoke to the city clerk. The minutes did correctly reflect what the wording of the motion was, but we all...
I know the spirit of the motion.
All sort of felt that the intent was committing funds from the sale of surplus real estate. And what I had discussed with Councilmember Goodspeed before the meeting tonight was that if any council member thought differently, that it wasn't earmarked for surplus sale of real estate, that we could have this addressed again at a future meeting. But if no one else felt that way, then I think we're okay with the way the motion was worded and heard and voted upon.
Because it certainly was in the spirit of just the vacant property that we had listed for sale.
I understand that.
Yep,
but-
I just wanted to also say that on behalf of myself. Thank you.
Okay.
That's the reason why I voted no. I have no problem with the money going where it's going.
Okay.
But we need to tighten up our motions just a little bit. And that's my only concern. That's it.
That's it.
Okay, I just want to thank everybody. I was at the command center with everybody from the city that came in, and I was down at the water when it would go out and come in, and you could have just about got washed away the way it was coming up so fast. So I really appreciate everybody that did everything down there, the workers, everybody did a great job.
I just have to add, just so everybody knows, we have a Parks Commission meeting on Thursday, and we will be discussing the grant and how the city would like to apply for that, so, for that.
Okay. I would like to reiterate what Councilmember Grabowski said. I came over to the command center. Everybody was focused and busy at the task at hand. I suggested my truck parked down by the Riverwalk, and Jeff says you might want to move it. So I did go down and move my truck from the low area, but it was a focused event. It was something awesome to watch the water come up and watch the water go down and watch things float back up the river as opposed to down the river. Very unusual event. Thanks to everybody that has come tonight and participate in the process of city government and offer some comments on the budget. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn to the budget work session. We're going to take a small break.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Sir, let's take 5 minutes and we'll come back into the work session.
I understand. I said, I know this big motion.
Well, she specifically talked about the sale of the surplus, $30 million.
But that's not the.
One guy in bed on Easter, they found him Wednesday, so he was in rough shape. Some of the other ones, like Travers, he was.
You're welcome.
The week that so because it was.
We're now
something.
at the point, the work session on the budget. One of the things that we didn't have to this date was a presentation on the DDA budget, so I'm going to ask Mr. Leffinen to give us an overview of the DDA budget to go with the city budget. Only when you want slides.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Tyler Leppinen, DDA Director. I'm glad I can come in front of you and talk about the budget. And I know TIF districts can be frustrating or confusing for people at times, so I'm glad to explain it. I also just had a brief comment, and I'll try to run through my stuff real quick because it's a long night. But I heard a number of people talk about the importance of the Ramsdell having things to do in the community, attracting people, having a good quality of life. And a lot of that really applies to the DDA as well in the downtown. And what I wanted to say was that may not have a direct or immediate impact on your budget, but what it does do is when people visit and they fall in love with Manistee and they want to move here, they buy houses, it attracts the talent for our workforce, and then they buy buildings, they open businesses, which generates growth, which generates demand, and demand increases property values, and property values increase your taxes. So with that, I'll get into the budget stuff. I have a map here of the DDA district. The DDA captures the increase in property taxes since the district was established. I think one of the issues I tend to notice when we're discussing the DDA is that we look at the downtown as separate from the city, but we need to consider that the money that's spent within the district is also part of the city. There are expenses that the city would incur if the DDA was not in place, and again, that's part of the city. So if we can go to the next slide. This is the taxable value in the DDA district. It's not the amount of taxes, it's the taxable value that the millage is collected on. So we can see that the DDA captures $8.5 million of taxable value, and then the base value of $6 million, which the regular millages still apply to. If we can go to the next slide. This chart shows the percent of our TIF revenues as a percentage of each taxing jurisdiction that the DDA collects from. As you can see, the city makes up 63% of the DDA's total budget, which is approximately $165,000. That also means that the DDA collects nearly $100,000 from other taxing jurisdictions. This is the same information presented as a bar graph. If the DDA did not exist, the city gets the $165,000 back to the general fund. but you do not receive the $100,000 on the, it'd be your left-hand side if you're looking at it. So I would encourage you to consider the opportunity cost of giving up that $100,000 annually coming back into the city, and the city would also incur other expenses that the DDA currently pays for. Next slide. This chart shows the amount of city taxes being captured compared to the amount that the city receives or expenses that would be incurred without the DDA. These costs include a $140,000 bond payment reimbursed to the city from the DDA, $18,000 in landscaping paid to the city, $22,000 paid to the city for services. And again, this is in addition to the tax revenue the city currently receives on properties from the base value discussed earlier. $13,000 for hanging baskets and watering, $8,000 for holiday decorations. And obviously, some of this will be discussed at another time as to what services or amenities the city could eliminate if the DDA no longer existed. But the fact is, there would still be a minimum of $40,000 in expenses the city would incur without the DDA, and assuming there are no infrastructure improvements in the downtown that would be needed for the next 20 years. Next slide. So this is the DDA TIF revenues. Over the past number of years, the DDA had lost about 15% of the revenue, finally showing an increase of 0.6% or approximately $3,000. Next chart, please. This is a chart showing how the expenditures in the DDA are divided, and I'll go a little further into detail into each spending category. The large majority of the DDA expenditures is what are considered required at 69%. The second largest category is beautification at 16% of the budget, and third is city services at 7%, professional services at 3%, advertising at 3%, office related at 2%, and projects, which is at less than 1%. Next, please. So required expenditures, this remains relatively flat and will continue to do so. The expenses in this category are the bond payment, salary and taxes, and insurance. Next, please. Beautification, this category also will remain flat throughout the years. The largest portion of this is the landscaping contract, hanging baskets, facade grants, and holiday decorations in that order. Next, please. City maintenance, this is the portion you're probably most concerned about. The DDA has more than doubled the amount being reimbursed to the city over the past 4 years. Next. Advertising, the board decided to increase the amount spent on advertising this year. We were looking to go back to the co-op advertising that was done in the past, where we'd be able to leverage these dollars with businesses to promote our downtown at a 6-to-1 ratio. The focus of this advertising would be within 2 hours drive time of the city and including the city, since most of the advertising that, for example, the CVB does is outside of that range. And again, this only represents 3% of the DDA total budget. Next, please. Professional services, this is one area of the budget that I've increased since I've been here, and again, this is 3% of our budget. The increases here are a result of a more accurate representation of our legal costs, as in the past, the legal costs exceeded the budget, and more is being spent on accounting. In the past, accounting was done in-house, and there were a number of issues and problems that were occurring. These have been corrected, and I consider it the best practice to have someone qualified in accounting checking over our books. Office-related expenditures, this was the one area where I was able to find some significant savings by moving my office into City Hall. And then the next page. And then projects, the biggest cost here for the last fiscal year was the MSU project. For this year, it includes parking signage, printing downtown dollars, and the downtown maps, which the cost of the maps are offset by selling advertising spaces. That would be all that I have for our budget. If you have any questions or concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
The city budget projects a $40,000 contribution as opposed to a $22,000 for city services. Can you address the impact of that or the probability of that?
The impact to the budget?
Yeah.
The DDA budget? We would have to make cuts, obviously, most likely advertising, and then we would have to start making some tougher decisions. I think the hanging baskets, the facade grants are things that we would have to discuss.
I think my problem with the way this was developed or presented, and I might be missing a step, so forgive me, is when the city told you what they wanted in the way of services, it didn't seem like there was any real negotiation going on. And I may be mistaken in my perception on that, but you came up with the DDA board came up with a budget, and I don't feel as though they even tried to meet this what the city wanted halfway. So that's my impression of how this went down, and I would like to know if there's any background information you can share on that.
Well, I shared it with my board. They didn't feel like they had enough time to consider what costs we were talking about. So I think that's an appropriate discussion for the TIF discussions, and I think the DDA board understands that there's increasing costs and that they're capturing tax values. So I think that they understand that that needs to go up. I think there's some negotiation that needs to take place on those costs that we were provided.
Well, that's my disappointment in the budget. So I guess, I just feel like there should have been a little bit more cooperation somehow.
Sure.
I want to address your comment directly. We only received that cumulative expense report, or what the expenses would be, right before our meeting. So, and that was the meeting we had to approve our budget. So yes, disappointment, I feel a lot of it, since I've been asking for that for 3 months. And it's not detailed, it's only cumulative. So I would like to know more details on that. So there will be more conversations, and I expect that we'll have further negotiations going on. But you can't just give me $200 and some thousand as a bill and then expect me to be going, oh yeah, this is perfect, we'll use it. No, there has to be a better conversation, and I do want to see more of a breakout on the expenses of what's being expected to be paid for.
Well, I think I'm kind of on the same page. I just, just seemed like that big piece was missing, and I wanted to try to figure out where it was at. So
I just want to let you know, too.
That conversation should happen, in my opinion.
We have that same feeling that the conversations need to be a little bit stronger. So that's for the board's piece.
I would also say that the city is receiving more revenues, or more than what the tax revenues that we're capturing from the city. So I understand that it needs to increase, but we need to come to some agreement on what that number is. So why 40,000? If the costs are 200,000, why not 100,000?
Well, I'd be happy with 100,000. I mean, I'm just being sarcastic with you, and I apologize for that, but Jeff is the one that developed that budget, and that's the person and the city staff that needs to talk to you about it.
Mm-hmm. And we have scheduled a meeting with city staff, and we'll have those discussions.
And that's one of the things that I've been encouraging all along, is that we have more joint meetings with the DDA, and have strategic planning that is in the same direction, so everybody's on the same path.
I would agree, and I think if the DDA board and the city council were more in line with the priorities, I think there would be less issues. Because if the DDA is addressing what the city council feels is necessary downtown, then I think you are benefiting from capturing taxes from other jurisdictions.
We do benefit $100,000, so. But those are mostly obligated dollars. We paying $140,000 for the streetscape still.
Correct.
That ends 2020 or 2019.
Was it 20?
In 19?
Fiscal year 20.
Okay. So that's gonna free up some money in light of any new debt taken on, which would have to be council approved to begin with, so.
I agree, and I think that's the discussions we're going through right now are a perfect time for the DDA and the city council to get in alignment with the priorities and see how we can best benefit the city.
Any other questions on DDA end of things? Thank you.
Thank you.
Budget. Um, Outstanding debt. We basically ended the last session on page 16, the budget issues page. Coming after that, debt and bond service. Does anyone have any questions about debt and bond service? There was one correction on the outstanding bank loan debts, and that was on Arthur Street. There was a clerical error before on that, Mr. Bradford?
That's correct. The Arthur Street.
There is actually 4 years left on that debt.
Yeah, I mean, that's been corrected on this one, but in the prior budgets, there was a typographical error that carried through for a number of years that showed one of those debt issues maturing earlier than it actually did.
Since the Ramsdale Theater is on this page, Mayor Smith, do you think we could go back and revisit that since we had so many people that spoke about it?
The appropriations?
Or did you want to save that for later on in the meeting?
Appropriations are
79. $78.
Okay, if we take appropriation from the top down. Appliances for area youth. Last year, $13,000, budgeted this year, $13,000. Is everybody good with that?
Yep.
Economic development, we haven't made any decision on economic development. You get $25,000 in there. I would personally rather come back and do an amendment if we decide to seek an action on economic development with the chamber, as opposed to proving something for a service that we have not contracted or agreed to at this point. I think we're probably gonna be short if, Mr. Bradford, was $40,000 the amount that was budgeted from the DDA for services, or the $22,000 they proposed?
Budgeted 40,000.
And the 25,000 for economic development was just a placeholder, knowing that council had indicated they wanted to do something with economic development. So that's where that number came from.
We want to leave a placeholder?
I think we have to leave it as a placeholder. If we're going to be discussing it again, we have to leave that option open.
I have no problem with it. I have no problem with leaving something there.
Okay. Anybody else? We got consensus? Leave it there?
Yeah, I'd say leave it there.
Payne Pool has one more payment left, 2019. Manistee Saints,
I still have an issue with Manistee Saints. I really think it's unfair to cut our appropriations to them in half. I would rather give a little bit of that back.
okay.
I would
You know,
like to,
you got two high schools that are one's a private school, one's a public high school that are gonna use city fields that they're not contributing to. You know, I get hung up on things that are not essential city government functions.
well, I get hung up on the fact that they're maintaining the field. And I know that they're paying for the water, and they're maintaining the field for the use of people who sign up for it, such as MCC and MAPS. So I think it's just, to me, it would be better either to leave it at 3,000 and not to cut it down in half. There's gotta be some middle ground in there.
Mr. McCullough, did you not state that they pay for the water if they go outside the regular watering cycle? In other words, they don't pay for,
The normal irrigation is covered under the Parks Department budget. Any additional watering beyond what we'd normally do on any of the other parks, then they're required to cover that cost.
and do you have any idea what the average was last year? Was there, do you have?
When they were informed of that last year, they didn't exceed the normal watering.
Okay.
But still, they do cut the grass. They do maintain a very nice ballpark, better than we have anyplace else in the city.
And they've, I wish they would have mentioned it tonight, but they've raised a ton of money and had a lot of volunteer effort to increase those facilities there as well. The fencing, scoreboard, the dugouts, they've done a lot of capital improvements there too.
And how much work does the city do over there? You see alluded to that tonight also.
We do all the normal maintenance on the entire park, but within the ball field itself, we simply, we remove the trash from it, and they do almost everything inside the fences.
So you do the restrooms, you,
Yep, we've got the
Empty the
restrooms so that
garbage.
those are open to the public. We clean those just like we do all the other dozen of them. And then the rest of the park with leaves, grass cutting, playground equipment is through the Parks Department.
Do they take care of the fence, Jeff?
There hasn't been any issues, but yeah, and I know that they applied for local grants and donations and stuff to actually improve that fence when it was put in.
what about the irrigation if they have problems? Do they take care of that, or do we take care of it?
They have in the past, yes. And they raised money to install that irrigation system as well. The only thing that we did for it was make sure we installed the back flow preventers and a metering system for it.
I guess I'd like to ask council to consider at least raising it to $2,000 rather than cutting this in half.
I'm okay with that.
It was cut to 15?
Yep.
You wanna raise it to 2? Anyone have any objection to raising it to 2?
No.
As in, no, we don't have an objection, or no?
Does anybody object to go raising it to 2,000?
Raising it to 2,000.
We're asking
That's-
to go from the 1,500 that we talked about to just adding another $500, Aaron.
Okay.
I'm going to make a statement, and I'll probably get beat up for this, but I struggle the first year I was on council when it comes to appropriations, and sitting in the audience in past councils and watch them struggle with appropriations and trying to justify in my mind why council picks on appropriations and doesn't spend as much time looking at departments and where we might make cuts in departments. It just doesn't, a lot of these appropriations in their own ways serve a real purpose in what makes Manistee and has for years. I just struggle with cutting these year after year after year, and then not deciding what we're gonna do with the money that we cut from these people. Where does it go? What happens to it? What's the purpose of it? I'm done.
Actually, I think that's a really good point. For the few dollars that we tried to cut from this, where does it go? It doesn't have a huge
Well,
impact.
I think that should be one of our purposes. If you're gonna take it from one area, you're gonna designate where it's gonna go in another area. I mean, part of the purpose of going through the budget is to see what council is in agreement with as far as what was proposed, and also outlining what council's priorities are for spending the resources that we have, such as when we went through the exercise with the excess property sale being dedicated to street repair. When you earmark money in a certain direction, I think any cut you make here, you could certainly do the same thing. At this point, we got a $1,000 cut. Does it matter where it goes?
Well, we've got 6,000.
How
Because
do
we're
we have
taking
$6,000?
$5,000 away from
Or we
the
haven't-
MRA. 5,000 away from them.
PEG maps. Where's the
We agreed to.
Manistee Recreation Association, John?
Right there above Manistee Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Skipped over it. I would like to see them to get the full $27,000, the Manistee Recreation Association. $5,000 is quite a cut. That one, if Bud could tell us why he wants to cut it $5,000.
Wait a minute, I'm Chip.
Or Chip, excuse me, my neighbor's
Uh,
Bud. My neighbor's
yeah.
Bud, yeah.
You told me to throw a number out.
I think they should get 27,000.
I do too, but, I'm not gonna fight with people over $5,000.
Well, it means a lot to them.
It does, but I believe that was the safest cut. Or the most they could physically handle when I was being asked, what do I think? Would I like to see them stay flat at $27,000? Yes. If there's a number, that's the number. But unfortunately, I was asked if we were cutting at the time we were cutting 20% off everybody. I'll be happy with giving the MRA $27,000, and we'll support that.
I would be too.
You know, I made a comment during our intermission to Commissioner Goodman. The Manistee Recreation Association serves the county, and municipalities throw some money in the pot, but the city is by far the largest contributor. The county does not contribute funds to the MRA. And another one we're going to come to is the Ramsdale Regional Center for the Arts, which apparently, because of the emails I'm getting from Winnetka and other communities besides Manistee, is not just a city function, yet the city bears the full responsibility for it. You know, I understand the other side of the argument too. Chairman Donch has shared with me that I should more appreciate what the county does for the city also. And I said, our citizens here in the city pay a lot of taxes and support a lot of functions in the county, but sometimes I feel we don't see the reciprocal come our way when it comes to the county supporting some of these functions. It has to be a blend. I mean, we're in a position where we keep talking, every budget you go back talks about you can't dismiss the thought of personnel cuts, or cuts in services. And we get people that come in here and they're worried we're gonna cut the police department. Nobody's said anything about cutting the police department. Nobody's said anything about eliminating a fire department and EMS. But, somehow on city staff, you keep putting it in the budget. Do you have a crystal ball of what's gonna have to go or where personnel cuts are coming in the future? What we need to head off, or are we just perfectly happy the way we are and let's just sign this budget and be done with it and go home?
No, it comes down to the council sets the priorities. The direction that we were given for this budget was two things. One, you wanted a balanced budget without using fund balance, and you wanted more for streets. That's what we've presented you. There was no discussion about looking at personnel reductions or cuts to specific departments or things of that nature. There was no discussions about that. Would certainly, if that's what council wants us to look at, we can look at that. But we developed the budget based on what your priorities were for us.
We increasingly take higher charges for services. We take administration fees that don't really represent the cost of administration for functions to fund the general fund. You know, it doesn't take an expert to see that, you know, the retirement and we get a little break on health care this year. I mean, you get a $10,000 break for 1 year and a 10% cap for the year following that, if I read the information on that right. So, you know, we could be right back where we are on health care in another year without the transition credit, and if it raises 10%, you know, which is a 9.9 cap or something that was addressed in there.
Well,
How are we gonna deal with these costs going forward?
Well, just, I want to clarify on the health care. We realized a savings of more than 10,000. That was a 10,000 realization for changing from Blue Cross to priority. All told, with the changes that we made in our health care through priority, we saved almost 10%. And that was about evenly split between the city and the employees. So it was about 10,000.
The city pays 83% and the employees pay 17%, and we split 50-50, right?
Well, what we do is, per the agreements in place, is that with any increases in healthcare costs, the city pays the first 5%. The next 5% is paid by the employee, and if it's greater than 10%, we've agreed to sit down and talk on how we're gonna deal with that. So we use that same rationale with the savings, is that the city took the first 5%, and then the employees got what was left, which is about 4.8 or 4.9.
What do we do with the savings?
We redirect it, it goes back into the general fund. If you're asking, do we specify that it goes into the police department or DPW? No, it's just factored into the general fund budget.
Just to elaborate on the city manager's comments, the budget anticipated a smaller reduction, because we were, at the time, we were basing it on the Blue Cross reduction, so there's a few extra dollars that'll be available based on going to priority health. It's probably not material to the overall budget, but the decrease that we would have gotten from Blue Cross, which we built into the budget, was less than the savings that we're getting with priority.
And as, you know, in terms of this budget development, I'm very comfortable with staff's been very upfront with council and saying that there are concerns going forward, and if we don't change the way we prioritize, then we're gonna have to make some decisions. So we either gotta create additional revenue streams, or we have to realign our priorities.
By realigning appropriations and picking different priorities is tip money compared to what I think we need going forward, if I'm reading the budget right. I think we need to look at our departments and have we done everything we can, and I'm sure that you have. I'm sure that, I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying, do we need to relook at departments and see if there's something we can put off? Can we put off buying, for example, and I'll use, not to pick on DPW, because they've sacrificed a lot over the years, probably more so than any other department. Do we need to buy a front-end loader next year? Can we make it last another year? Are there things that we can do that we can find money, a little bit more money for streets?
Well, number one, the front-end loader is done through the motor pool, it's not through the general fund. And we have the department heads develop their budget, they work with Ed, and then we get together, because we're never fully in alignment, and we have to go around on what can we give up until we get to the goal of a balanced budget with no use of fund balance. So we've given up things, and as the budget goes through the year, that we have to react to things, we'll make other changes as needed. If something comes up that we can't afford for some reason to buy, I don't know, the new handguns might be an example. If there's something came up that we don't know about that's a higher priority, we would look at making those kind of changes.
Well, now that you mentioned handguns, I'll just elaborate on that. I don't know why I didn't go through a revenue sharing application. We bought tasers and stuff for the county. I'm sure that it would be a high priority for revenue sharing under public safety grants. There is a second round coming.
I understand, I do believe that's a plan that the public safety director is looking at, but, you know, we've submitted the grants. We've submitted a couple of grants, and it was for the cycle where we didn't know whether the handguns were gonna get funded in the budget. And I think it's a more appropriate, if the handguns make it through the budget process, and we know that council supports that expenditure, then we can make that request to the local revenue sharing board.
I would much rather have the handgun show up in the police department budget as opposed to being paid for by a capital improvement fund. Capital improvement, I just get stuck on the association of capital improvement and capital assets. That handguns are not capital assets, don't add value to the city. I mean, just my own opinion. Capital assets are things that you put in here that enhance the total value of the city. They're property items. I mean, heating and cooling system for the Ramsdale, new roof for the Ramsdale, marina money, the fish cleaning station. Those are capital improvement items. I think all too often we look at the capital improvement fund and say, we just take $5,000 out of there, or we take $9,000 out of there. I think that's really a big project fund for the city, for capital improvement. I object to the fact that departments don't pay enough to the motor pool to fund their vehicles. I think it's misleading as far as what a department costs, because we're not capturing that cost. Again, I'll go back in history, and there was a time when they leased vehicles and they purchased vehicles. They didn't finance all the vehicles that they're buying. I mean, good golly, 14 years ago, the police department was paying $49,000 into the motor pool fund. Today they pay $31,000. It's nowhere near what it costs to put vehicles in the field for the police department. But I see some inconsistencies. In the past, we had a column in here when we went through the departments that showed what the difference was from last year and what the percent was. That's gone. I think things change in the budget,
Can I correct
and they
that
get
for-
more
Mayor?
confusing.
Can I correct that for a minute? There is a summary column that shows that. You are correct that the details, we changed the presentation this year, primarily because we have the 3-year projected, and it was getting very hard to get that to fit in reading, even in a landscape format. We have that information. I'm prepared to discuss that information tonight. If council would like to see that, we can provide it. We just chose not to put it in the budget this year.
Mr. Taylor, I just have a question about, we talked about EMS and their payment they receive for services and how we were receiving a bill, and if we send them two bills, if they lived in the city and they didn't pay it, we wrote it off. And at one point in time, we talked about the budget, and you said, I'd be careful until we decide. I'm trying to state you correctly here. I don't want to misstate. You talked about the impact not receiving that money that people have been paying would affect the budget. Do we have an idea on how much money we're talking about? People who paid that didn't really have to pay?
I don't know that we've received that number from Acumen, and I'm not certain that they can get that number. And Keith, do you have a better answer to that?
No, that's not a figure that we've gotten back from Acumen specifically yet. One figure that I did determine though, that Councilmember Pontiac had brought up is, well, if we just stopped doing soft billing and went back to insurance only, what might be something that was realized in effect? And the manager said, well, we gotta determine what that impact would be before we just make that decision arbitrarily. And my figures estimated about $24,000 would be that difference from soft billing back to insurance only, with the figures that I had available. But as far as what might be paid back, if that was, determined from those that did utilize soft billing and pay it above that, I don't have that figure solid yet.
Who made the decision to soft bill people?
We're still.
I mean, when did that occur?
That, I think, was back in 14,
Yes.
early 14. We haven't definitively determined. We know we have an email chain that the then public safety director had that authorization, but we don't know if it had manager concurrence, and we're looking into that. We have archived the previous city manager's emails, and we're having staff go through that to try to see if we can figure that out.
And I've asked the question, and we got a whole schedule of fees and fines and stuff like that in our City Hall guide. And, if we're gonna charge people and we're gonna run an ambulance service, why don't we list those fees in that guide so people see what they are? Why don't we put in there that, if you're a resident of Manistee and your insurance doesn't cover it, or you haven't met your deductible, and you get billed for it, you don't have to pay it. I mean, why mislead people to think they have to pay something that they're already paying taxes to provide the service for?
Well, if the city wants to provide that service for free, we need to know that.
They can bill insurance. I mean, I believe that's the way the service was brought online, that it was gonna be a revenue generator, but it wasn't gonna cost the taxpayers that's paying for the service. I don't care what you charge people in Manistee Township and Fowler Township. I would rather the service was done here, because we're the ones that pay for the service in the first place.
If council wants to make that change, we can certainly make that change.
Insurance only.
I think it's, yeah.
Which is fine. Just understand that we're gonna have about a $20-some thousand dollar.
About $24,000.
$24,000 revenue loss by doing that.
Well, I think it's only fair. I mean, if the taxes are already taken to be paid towards that, and then the client doesn't understand, I just don't think it's right.
Well, there may be two issues here. We're providing a level of service for the community that those that use it pay for it. Pay more for using that.
If I need a police officer to come to my house and check something suspicious, they don't give me a bill.
No. I don't think it's.
I mean, if I'm having a health issue and they come and check me and my insurance doesn't pay it, I pay taxes for that.
Well, number one, you don't get billed unless you get transported. Okay? And
That was not my understanding. My understanding was that even for basic EMS, you would be billed.
Not unless you're transported.
Wasn't that on the
correct?
rate schedule?
Really, the only exception to the generalization that the manager's making regarding billing, yes, you only get billed if you're transported to the hospital, with the one exception usually being if it's something of significance that can be treated and immediately reversed, then the patient has the ability to sign off on. One thing in particular would be a diabetic hypoglycemia. They have a very low blood sugar. We have the ability to start an IV, give that blood sugar back, and if this is, I wouldn't say routine, but not a rare occurrence for that patient, and that maybe is something that they took too much insulin, didn't eat soon enough, and that was an easily reversible condition. That's something that private insurance companies will often reimburse for that treatment on scene.
But you do bill it then, if they
Correct.
weren't transferred.
Only in that case. I mean, it's one of very, very few cases that we actually provide treatment and don't transport that is billable, but is not paid, not entirely paid by Medicare, Medicaid.
If someone calls for an ambulance and it's a lift assist, there's no charge. If they
Correct.
come and they want to be evaluated and they refuse transport, there's no cost.
But if they're given some kind of medicine, are they billed at the time?
Bob, the only case that they're given a medication is usually that diabetic hypoglycemia.
Without going to the hospital.
Right.
So just let me make sure I understand the way it is today. If you come to my house and pick me up and take me to the hospital, you're gonna bill my insurance.
That's correct.
And then you're going to send me a bill for the difference.
That's correct.
And if I don't pay that bill after 2 billing cycles, you're gonna write it off.
That's correct.
Okay, I think that's wrong. I sat out there in the chamber, or in the seat out there, and I heard that presentation, and I heard it was to be free to the taxpayer of the city of Manistee. They were paying for it, and they would not get billed for it. They bill your insurance, and that would be the end of it. And somehow that got changed over time, and that's, I think, what you guys are looking into.
Exactly.
I want it to go back to the way it was. If we want to change it in the future, then that's something council should sit down and talk about and decide
Sure.
how we should move forward with that.
And by all means, if that's what council wants to do, we can change it.
That's what I want.
Yes.
That's what I would like. Is there anybody else that wants to weigh in on that?
Would like it that way also.
I would like it that way also. I understand.
I totally
Sure,
agree.
Tom.
You're right.
Yeah.
100%.
You know, and I want to say this, Deputy Chief, I have absolutely no concerns. I think the job that your crew does over there is a spectacular job. They're first-rate paramedics. But you know, a long time ago, when I had a business in town across from the fire station, there was a West Shore ambulance that parked in front of the fire station every day. When we went into the transport service, it was about revenue. It wasn't about a lack of service. It clearly stated in the position paper that it would be a duplicate service and it would be competing with West Shore. I don't mind having it. I don't mind having our own people do that as long as we can afford to do that. But you know, we're getting to a point in expense growth that the question is going to have to be asked of city staff. You know, what's going to be on the chopping block? You know, what are we going to do in the future? Because I just don't see the revenue growing fast enough to keep up with the expenses we've got, and the expense of the equipment that we have to replace.
Right, at this time right now, the revenues from the ambulance more than cover the expenses. So it's a
Without
revenue.
the soft billing even.
Excuse me?
Even without the soft billing?
That would be my
Yes.
guess, yes, yeah.
Okay.
So it is a revenue stream for the city.
Right.
Well, I think the billing agent, when she was here, she stated that when if she was to need the ambulance service in her area, the bill would look like the total cost, what your insurance paid, and at the bottom it would say you owe nothing, zero.
Both methods, soft billing and insurance-only billing, are both very common throughout the state with municipal-based ambulance services. And I personally have no issues with it being either way. Like the manager said, I'm certain that we'll still generate a revenue either way.
Deputy Chief, could you don't mind if I ask him to do me a favor, do you?
Go ahead.
Could you give me a comparison of ambulance charges, like from Munson and other municipalities as compared to what, I know when we did the rate increase, it wasn't a big increase, but I've heard from some people since then horror stories about $4,000 ambulance bills to go to West Shore in the past.
Yeah, I
stuff
mean, private
from-
ambulance
from
services, they
Catholic
may or may
Central.
not share that information, but they're certainly within their means to charge as much as they would like to. We
Wow.
set our fees based on Medicare, Medicaid,
Yeah.
and Blue Cross.
I might know some people that can help me out there too, so.
Would we ever get a $4,000 bill?
No.
I didn't think so. It just seemed,
I had a sister-in-law whose daughter hurt her ankle at Catholic Central, and by the time she was done, the ambulance bill was like $3,800, and it only went to West Shore Medical Center.
Yeah, I can't speak for them.
I'm not sure how that happened, you know, it might be that that's what their insurance paid, so that's what they charged them. You know, I think sometimes that's the way things go, so.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that might be an isolated incident in some other ambulance service, but I think the deputy chief is in agreement that we don't have those high bills.
Yeah. But that's why I'm asking the
See,
question.
the more you charge, clearly the more you're gonna be writing off on the backside. So, you wanna make, as good a balance as you can. So to charge an exorbitant rate for a service with the hopes that you might get it all back on a small percentage of your clients, well, that's sticking your neck out there, quite a bit. When for our payer mix with primarily Medicare and Medicaid, that's an extreme amount to be writing off.
Okay,
Right.
thank you. You know, while we got these appropriations up here, it's apparent people just want to leave them the way they are.
Well, we haven't talked about the Ramsdale. You've left that out.
Well, I mean, it's projected at 55. Does everybody want to leave it at 55? Does anybody want to reduce it?
I would like to leave it at 55. What would you guys like to do?
Can't cut their feet. You can't cut their feet off. You gotta give them some stands.
I would be willing to bump it back up to at least 50. But I don't. I think we've got to start reducing.
Well, they did reduce it by 5. And I don't know. Let's hear from everybody else first. Cooper, what do you think?
Honestly, I think that it should be left at 55,000 to give them a chance to get going, and maybe eventually they can pay more later on. But the 55,000, it is a $5,000 decrease, so I'm thinking that's good.
Any other comments?
Go to 55.
Okay. We'll leave it at 55. We had $1,000 that we didn't give to the veterans for flags in the budget this year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
We have $1,000 that we didn't give to the veterans for flags this year that was appropriated last year.
Right, we're not funding them again this year.
Okay.
Or we're not funding them this year, yes. Because legally, we can't.
Mayor, Heather, who pays the bills, says we haven't paid that yet for 2017-18 because it typically goes out in May. So I guess we'll want to check with George if he's deemed that to be a not appropriate expenditure of public funds. We might not be able to cut the check for this year. But that would be a city attorney determination.
Are we done with appropriations?
I think so.
Okay.
So just to be clear, was there a consensus to leave the MRA at 27,000? Is that what I heard? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Leaving the Ramsdale at 55.
55.
And MRA, I'm sorry, MRA is going to stay at 27? Did I hear that right?
That's
what
what I'm asking
that was
for, yeah.
requested.
I was requesting that, and Chip said that he'd go along with it.
Okay.
Okay, and where do we stand?
You know, at some time, we're gonna have to have a timeline. I get tired of reading in a budget that it's into the foreseeable future. Well, what is a foreseeable future? When are we going to get out of an obligation? I mean, what's the milestones to that? So I would challenge the Ramsdale Regional Center to come up with some sort of a timeline with some milestones. I want to see where we're going. And it'd be the same thing when we talk about economic development. I want to know what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and how we're going to measure it. It's got to have some concrete to it.
One clarification, where are we with the Saints for funding?
2,000.
2,000? Okay.
2,000. And if we're only going to give the Saints 2,000, I want to take that $1,000 that the Saints aren't going to get, and I want to give it to the Historical Museum.
You know what? I agree with you.
Hmm?
I agree with you totally.
Yep.
Me too. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Totally agree with you.
I think Denise made a pretty good
They
pitch.
do a significant service to the city, and it's essential to the Historical Committee.
So they get $10,000.
Right.
Make that
I said that,
10,000.
I said that the last work session, I wanted to restore it back to the 10.5. But
I'm perfectly good. I think that's
Okay,
an awesome
everybody's
idea.
good with
So-
Historical Museum at 10,000 instead of 9. That takes care of the $1,000 the Saints aren't gonna get. Now we're done with appropriations. Downtown development. Mr. Leffinen gave his presentation on the budget. I'm on the DDA board. I saw the DDA budget. Includes $18,000 in reimbursement for the landscaping. And their budget includes $22,000 for downtown services. And I can attest that they did get, at a late date, a billing, $40,000 for restrooms. You know, I really have a problem with that. Does it cost us $40,000 to do another restroom or 2 restrooms? Who does the restroom at the Arthur Street?
The manager asked me to look at maintenance activities that the Public Works provides within the DDA district. So I sat down with the staff. We made a list of everything that was above and beyond what we normally do elsewhere in the town. When we looked at the bathrooms are cleaned by our Parks Department during, say, from May through October. They're cleaned 7 days a week, citywide. We have contracted deals with our concessionaires so that they cover bathrooms at the beaches. We have deals and contracts with our vendor for the fish cleaning stations so that they maintain, for the most part, those bathrooms, but we still do portions of those. But they're cleaned Monday through Friday by normal staff. On the weekends, we have to pay a minimum of 4 hours for somebody to come in on a Saturday, or time and a half, whichever is greater. It usually ends up being a time and a half situation, and we clean them on Sundays, and those become double time situations. They're also cleaned on weekends where there's events, activities, or holidays. They're often cleaned 2 times a day on the weekends. It's just dependent on whether we get reports back or whether there's a lot of people downtown. So what we did with each and every one of those items is we looked at the frequency with which we do those. We looked at the manpower, the hours, the number of people. The rates that we applied as a billing rate are the state rates that are audited by the state of Michigan. So those are quite a bit less below what a private contractor would charge in any of those. And then we totaled them all up into each of those categories that I put in my memo. And then most of the supplies, I did not go back through and add up every bottle of cleaner and stuff like that. We put some estimates that I think are probably on the very conservative side.
You know, I would think, being a person on the DDA, and also being on council, but to put the DDA hat on, I'd say I'd like an opportunity to solicit a private contractor for cleaning that restroom, because I'd almost guarantee you could get it done for substantially less.
I'd be fine with that.
As far as the marina restroom, who owns the marina? Just because they paid for the restroom to be installed, they're responsible for it? I mean, the DDA paid for the restrooms to be installed when the building was built, right? They kind of supplemented the city funding for that.
They, as far as my recollection, the DDA paid for restrooms to be added to the previous marina building when that marina building was expanded. That building had structural issues, it was settling, and it was structurally unsound. That's why this building was built, was to replace that. At the time, the DDA put capital money to build those bathrooms there that exist today.
For public use.
For public use, yep.
Yeah, it's our understanding that the city would not have put the bathrooms in without the request of
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, and so that, I mean, we just looked at it, and that's what I asked Jeff, was look at what are we doing down in the downtown area above and beyond what we would normally do because of requests or things through the DDA. That's how this list was developed.
And be clear, there's a third bathroom at Washington and Veterans Drive that's within the Manistee County Transportation Building that is public, but the Dial Ride operation does the full maintenance of those. We don't touch those.
Yeah, County. There's a millage for that, though, you know? Okay.
Jeff, do you have a shift on Saturday where the guys could go in and clean, or is nobody extra?
We do not. We have 2 full-time people in the Parks Department. So most of the work that we do is supplement that with part-time help during the summertime. And we've looked at ways to try to split those full-time employees out and try to reduce those overtime costs on the weekends. But when you've got 7, 8 kids, you've got to manage those youth. And there's just really not a way to effectively get all of our stuff done by splitting up one of the guys to work Saturdays and Sundays on straight time. So it's just the nature of what we have to work with. And that memo, it was a memo. It was not a bill. It was a memo that just gave some perspective of how much additional effort we put into that area.
I'm just thinking, you know, we have restrooms at Reese Park, we've got a restroom at the boat launch, we've got restrooms all over the city. You know,
At the
it must be
beaches.
costing us a fortune to maintain all these restrooms.
Mhm.
I mean, and you would think that we would provide public restrooms, and yeah, they're in the DDA district in the boundaries, but does just, I get confused over some of these issues, so.
Well, again, I come back to, you know, it's our understanding the city wouldn't have put in those bathrooms except for the request of the DDA. So that's what we were just looking at, is because of things that are in the DDA at their request that we have to support, what are those costs? Stands to reason if they weren't there, we would have no expenses to support those. And that's the only thing was, we were just trying to reflect the city's services in the downtown area.
And the one that's right down between Greenbush and Division Street, Greenbush and, I'm having a, anyway, right down next to Goodies is probably the most used bathroom in the community, except for the beaches during the summertime.
But the vendors take care of those.
Tremendous amount of vandalism, tremendous amount of just filth. I mean, there's days where we've got staff in there cleaning up the messes they leave for a day at a time. It's not every day, but it happens quite a bit. We've been working with the police department to try to lock them up at night because it's amazing how much people abuse them.
DDA is gonna receive about $263,000, but I could tell you, you know, from, what's the bond payment, 142, 145?
Roughly.
I can tell you the director has no retirement program and no health care program, has a base salary. We've got these other expenses that were pointed out, the hanging baskets, we've got the landscaping, you got the $22,000 that they do give them. How much would you generate from the events, Tyler?
The events that bring in about 16,000, I think is what is projected, and our largest one is Hops and Props, which is around 12. I just wanted to add, I had a conversation with Jeff about this as well, and we're willing to look at where we can decrease the level of service as well, and other ways to save money. But those are the types of discussions that we don't have time for in the amount of time since we've been notified of the cost of the district. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Anyone have issues with the DDA budget?
Yeah, but I might be alone. But yeah, I do. I do. I'm dissatisfied with the huge difference there and the lack of communication and not being able to negotiate to a better number.
I don't think that's a fair characterization of it. We've been working on putting this together. We've told them, you know, unofficially that we feel we spent over $200,000 in the DDA district that we weren't getting fully reimbursed for. And, you know, because we don't track these on a, you know, each expense we have to go through with the guys, and it took a while to put this together. And it was driven to use at our TIF discussions.
I mean, that's pretty much across the board though, Mr. Taylor, because as I go back just 2 years in the budget, back to 15, look at 16. Our charge for service across the board has jumped $250,000 from refuse to street. Those numbers have come up significantly. So, and the budget's even said that we were reducing the subsidy to the residents in these areas because the general fund was subsidizing that. That language is in there. So, I mean, not just the DDA, it's the city in general that has been under reimbursing for services.
Right, and I think we're trying to.
Is that a correct characterization? Or are we just adding money to the general fund?
No, we're not just adding money to the general fund. There's things that, when the general fund had ample cash, it wasn't necessary to fully charge those additional funds for that. I mean, the city's general fund has always implicitly subsidized the street funds because it doesn't get fully reimbursed for all of the costs, or hadn't gotten fully reimbursed for all of those costs. For the last 3 or 4 years, we have a much better system to track that, and we do that, you know, every month so that we can fully reimburse that. Same way with the refuse fund. We weren't fully reimbursing the general fund for the services that it was providing to pick up the lawn bags and the leaf bags. I heard you mention that you think the administration fees are out of whack. I'd like to maybe explore that with you further because I don't believe they are out of whack for the services that are being provided. So your point about the administration fees and the reimbursements and stuff have gone up a lot in the last 5 years is absolutely correct. And that's one of the ways that we've balanced the budget, but there's nothing inappropriate about that. It's being a more accurate measure, which I think helps with the transparency. And one other comment I'd like to make about the DDA, and this is prior to Tyler being here and prior to Commissioner Goodman, but the city has told the DDA going way back to the days when John Rose was here that the city is woefully unreimbursed for expenses downtown. They went through this exercise 6-7 years ago, and I think the number, and it's not nearly as accurate as the one Jeff produced, but it was probably double that magnitude. You know, it was much more back of the envelope calculation. So the fact that the DDA hasn't been fully reimbursing the city for excess services provided has been known for years and years and years and years and years. So it should come as no surprise to anybody.
We can't fix it in 1 year.
But I'm not suggesting that. That's never been the suggestion. The suggestion is, and that's why the budget gradually has been increasing that, is to allow the DDA's budget to absorb that, but yet to try to get closer to some level of reasonable reimbursement.
It's certainly not my intent to have the city fully reimbursed for all city expenses in the DDA, because there's certain things they're part of us that we gotta do. This is just to get people to understand the level of commitment we have down there and have some discussions on if we need to cut back, where do we wanna cut back?
Well, I would think also, in the city is still capturing the base tax value on the DDA district.
Right.
I mean, we've got, what, a base value of about $6 million that we're capturing taxes on, and the DDA is capturing the 8. And, you know, for people that don't know how that works, that when the DDA was created, they capped the taxes that were being received, and the DDA, as their function to increase the tax value of the property that they had, would capture the revenue above that. But in addition to the city taxes, they capture all of the millage taxes, the county taxes, and the West Shore Community College taxes also. I don't think they capture the regular 18 mills for the school district, but all the millages. So it's not like the city's not getting any tax at all from the downtown district. They are.
But are we, I'm sorry, I shouldn't interrupt, sorry. But does that account for inflation? I mean, at that base number that we're getting?
No,
we're not getting any inflationary
It's
increases.
capped at the number from 1980, Jeff?
See, that's the problem.
85, whenever it was founded, 85, I think.
Yeah, that's the problem, because it's really decreasing. If you're
we're
not.
we're gonna have a TIF renewal discussion, so. I mean, other than that, without a significant impact to DDA, we're not gonna get the $40,000 from the DDA budget as requested by the city.
I would see that that's a probability, but I think my position is, and speaking for myself, is I would like to see if they can come up with a compromise or a number.
Last year's contribution, not excluding the 18,000 for the landscaping contract, which is what they were paying to the private contractor, and the city's just doing it, is it went from 22,000 to 40,000, so that was an $18,000 increase is what we were asking for, just for clarity.
You're getting 40,000 now. You're getting 18,000 for landscaping, and you're getting 22,000 for services.
Correct.
So.
Well, the previous fiscal year, we reimbursed $10,000, and then we came up to 22,000. So we more than doubled the amount that we were reimbursing the city. And I would again like to point out that the city is currently being reimbursed above what we are capturing from the city. So any more amount that we go up, we're basically just taking the county taxes or the West Shore community taxes and moving it to the city. I'd just like to point that out.
Yeah, if they're paying $40,000 and the bond debt's $145,000, then we're already above the level that they're capturing from city taxes.
So we're still getting, well, we're getting shortchanged. Basically, we're supplementing with taxpayers' money. That's what it boils down to, so.
Yeah. Um, 10 o'clock.
Well, you sit on that board, so you were there when they approved the budget, and did you have any comments about it?
I had comments about it, but, you know, it's kind of like this budget, you know, there's only a certain amount of money there. You can't manufacture it. It's not gonna fall out of the sky. There are certain base expenses that sort of like appropriations. People tell you what the minimum amount is that they can get by with. You know, we heard that from area youth last year. If they can't do 6,500, if they don't get 13, they'll close the doors. I think that's the same position you'll put in the DDA in, they'll have cash flows. You don't have a big financial reserve. You don't have a rainy day fund, do you? Not significant though, right?
Well, with the purchase of the property this
Okay.
year, much of it's tied up, but there's a fund balance.
And I have accounts receivable.
How much is it?
I'd say 180.
And that's excluding the purchase of the property that you just made, right?
Well, we just got reimbursed from the Vogue 112,000 for the interest plus the half the principal. I think a more reasonable thing that we could be looking at is, so we've been decreasing the last 5 years or probably more, at least 15% of our revenue. We've had an increase. Why don't we look at what share of that increase we could contribute back to the city?
That's a good suggestion.
So I think starting off from there would be more reasonable, but.
How much would that be, Sean?
But your increase was about 30,000?
The increase was 3,000.
3,000 was all you had this year?
Hmm.
I
we
thought
had
the
we had
property values in the
0.6
DDA district had the biggest increase this year.
We had a 0.6 increase in our tax
A
revenue.
couple of things. There was a lot of development in the DDA district. It was almost all in the brewery, and that's captured by the BRA. So you've got a tax capturing jurisdiction layered on top of a tax capturing jurisdiction layered on top of the base value. From my perspective, I've heard a lot of council discussion about having to set priorities. And the DDA as a board sets their priorities, but I think the bigger question that may merit discussion and probably will come out in the TIF discussion are the priorities that the DDA has, priorities that the city council has. That's the real question. So
Those
I'm not
need-
trying to belabor your point about maybe tie the reimbursement to your growth rate. I don't know that that's the right measure from my perspective as city finance director, but
Yeah.
I think it requires a broader conversation.
Well, I think that's what's underlying a lot of my dissatisfaction, and we do need to have that discussion. So, and it would help to have that discussion. It would
And
be
I think the
healthy to have
DDA
it.
board is fully in agreement with that, so.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Everybody ready to wrap it up?
What else we got?
Want to keep going? Well, we haven't gotten into anything.
Respectfully, I got kids at home. I need to.
Yeah.
10 o'clock is.
We have another session for Tuesday, the 24th.
Yeah, we can have another work session.
Yes. And we schedule more if we need to. I mean, we got till the 15th to pass the budget, so we're going to take as much time as we need to go through this and make sure everybody's comfortable. I would like to certainly see some changes in the format and how we're accounting for things going forward in the future. I think the DDA, we need to set a course and have some joint sessions with the DDA periodically, so we are all on the same page and in agreement as to where we're going, so I think that can happen.
I would like to see the DDA meetings taped so that we can watch them online.
We've offered that and they declined.
Wow, okay.
Is there a reason why?
I think that was when we asked if we wanted to, if they wanted
Right,
to
that's
sit
when
at
we
the.
put the
Yeah.
stuff in and said you could sit up here and get it
They
taken.
didn't want
But the board didn't want to do it.
Well, you know what, we can fix that, so, no?
I said, yeah.
Yeah, we can fix that, because we've got enough positions up here and microphones and stuff, someone show us how to operate it, and as opposed to sitting at tables, we do like the planning commission and historical district commission and everybody else does.
Just suggesting that offer was extended.
It was.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think they should reconsider it. At this point, at the stage of the budget, if I'm the only dissenter that's been dissatisfied, I'd say let it go, but I really want that robust discussion about the TIF. And I think we need to have it soon.
Okay.
And I want them taped.
Tuesday? Motion to adjourn?
You got it.